It being on or after 7 o'clock, I'm going to open up the June 20th meeting of the Georgetown Conservation Commission. And first on the agenda, we have a few business items, and we have a number of hearings, some of them to be continued. And we also have a few discussion items. And I would like to start off with 388 North Street enforcement order discussion. If I could have the owner of the property, if you could identify yourself, please, and come on up, we can have a discussion.
You can bring it if you need it. You have it.
Good evening.
How you doing?
Good. So Steve, why don't you kind of start us off in the discussion of how we get where we are?
This is the bigger plot plan, highlighted with yellow. So
Sorry,
roughly,
is it this one?
yes.
Yes, folks could just identify yourselves, please, for the,
Scott Perry.
okay.
Corey,
So this is, we discussed this briefly at the last meeting. This is the enforcement
Right.
order with some grading and tree cutting that was done. Septic system was outside of the commission's jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm.
That was replaced. Never actually got to who actually was doing the construction of it, but some additional work was done, getting much closer to the resources. A lot of trash and debris, kind of a very complicated site, but definitely a lot of grading and tree cutting within probably 15 feet of the wetlands. No erosion control in place.
Was
Issued,
the trash in the front or in the back? Or
Trash was
everywhere.
throughout the yard, actually in some of the water itself. It was pretty. I took 530 yards of trash just out of the property.
So put an enforcement order on the property, kind of asked them to install erosion control. Had a few discussions on the best path forward. At one point, they expressed interest and wanted to do some additional work on the property. They did file a notice of intent that will be heard later at 7:30. My recommendation is to make sure that the enforcement action issues are 100% resolved before closing out the NOI. You can discuss both.
we certainly,
You
we
can't-
certainly will have to open it, but we have to deal with the enforcement
Correct.
issue first, and
And
just make sure it
So
gets.
if we can come to resolution on the enforcement action that's to the satisfaction of everybody, then you could technically close out both, but I think it's not likely just because we need more details on the plans, depending on what we decide to do.
I'm assuming you weren't the original residents of the property, you
No.
bought the property and are trying to
Yep.
make some improvements, clean it up.
We purchased it about 7 or 8 months ago. There was 7 vehicles, 2 boats, a few trailers, a camper, and just the trash was everywhere. Tires, oil jugs. I mean, there was just endless amounts of trash. We still find trash, trying to clean everything up. And that's, we did, with all the cleanup, some stuff had to come out because it was just either dead or couldn't get the vehicles out of the way. It was pretty bad.
Well, from a wetlands perspective, it's not that, stuff like that can't get cleaned up, it's just that there's a process that we have to get notified and.
Right, we were
And what,
obviously unaware of it coming into it.
I'll
know.
be upfront, this was our, first home together, no knowledge of wetlands, protection acts, buffer zones. So anything that we did, we thought we were doing something good to try to improve the land, clean it up, protect people around us. But as it was brought to our attention, we definitely encroached on it.
I mean, I do have pictures if you'd like to see the pictures of everything.
Yeah, actually, if you do have them,
The trash, yeah.
certainly take a look at them.
Keep the plans.
I think that comes down the road.
Can I ask about the wetland?
Yes.
What's it, what does it, attach into?
Nothing.
Or is it an isolated?
It's actually a town-owned parcel. 95% of that wetland is on town property.
But it looks,
And it's
it's
isolated.
right next to the road, it's
It is,
isolated,
correct.
and, it's permanent, it's there
Correct.
all year long.
Correct.
And it looks like it might actually be road runoff
It
that
is
fills
from the
it.
60s. They regridded the road there. The houses were actually taking water in, and the town regridded the road, and they actually took that piece of property in the early 60s for the water runoff. The way the road's pitched, it all runs into there like these heavy rains now, and the snow runoff. Yeah, it doesn't go
So that's its
nowhere.
function, is to take the water
Right.
off the road.
Yep. Yeah, it's not tied in to anything.
Right.
It's not, it's wet now, obviously, because,
Everything is.
yeah,
The
two
heat.
2 months of rain.
Yeah.
Look at this, like, ridge, see the ridge up behind here? Is there a ridge up behind here, a stone wall or something?
That's actually way back. That's
That's
just an example of
That's
the
actually
trash
like beyond the 100-foot mark. That was just to show how much,
debris.
stuff is in this yard.
Is that
No,
what you found, or
no.
is that what you piled?
No, that was just there. There was piles
Yeah,
of
that's pretty
trash
awful.
everywhere.
I think
Yeah,
he
there's
was
more to
literally
come.
disposing of his trash. in
They
the
have an
yard.
observatory there?
Yeah, that was a telescope. There was some interesting things
Waiting for the aliens to show
we
up.
come across. I don't know if he was waiting
Call 'em
for
as I
that
see 'em.
water to flood out with that boat, or. Yeah, we're just trying to
I'm
get
sorry.
it cleaned up and
You
some lawn.
You know, we certainly don't object to people, doing improvements, cleaning up property. Again, from our perspective, the concern was just the proximity of activities
Right.
and cuttings. We obviously don't have an issue removing trash. We do like to have some say as far as if we're cutting trees and deforesting areas and doing things relating to the wetland vegetation. We do obviously allow, things to be trimmed, but a lot of times that can be just coordinated with the agent.
Yeah.
So as Rebecca asked, what is this
That was-
berm back here?
I don't know if they dug the yard out years ago, because right there, so on one side there was a berm, and then there's another berm to the right. Looks like they dug the yard out years ago to take all the sand out of there. That's my guess. I
Did you see that, Steve?
have no idea.
That's interesting. Huh.
I mean, it was such a heavily disturbed site.
Oh, it really
I wouldn't
is.
be surprised.
Well, you were pretty brave to take that site on.
I was just gonna say
Well,
that.
we knew what we were getting into with the vehicles, but we couldn't have predicted how much trash we would have.
Yeah, there's trash. There was buried everywhere. When they dug the septic, I had to put another 30 yarder in, just the trash they found in the ground. It was crazy.
So, what are we looking at with the green here? Is this all
Those are-
gone now, or?
No, those are still standing. That's actually yesterday. Those are, if you look on the map, where the property line is, where the town of Groveland is, those are actually in there. I was just,
Sorry, town of Georgetown?
yeah, town of Georgetown,
Right.
Actual wetlands.
right there. So there's 4 of them in there that are dead, that we didn't go in, in this area at all to cut anything. That was just showing like there's so much dead in there from the water and the vines taking over.
So I,
That's part of habitat though,
Right.
they stay, you don't cut those down.
Well, they're hollow. They're gonna come down.
But that's the
So,
wind that takes them down.
the-
Their
What if it
habitat.
fell on our house?
Yeah. Well, it takes the power lines down.
I mean, that's part of the discussion.
Okay,
Yeah.
we just took the pictures just to have.
Yeah. So the plot plan I passed around has kind of highlighted in yellow the estimated area of disturbance within the commission's jurisdiction.
Estimated proposed or estimated?
No, that's what
already?
was cut under the enforcement concerns. That's not part of the notice of intent discussion. That will come later.
No, but I guess the question is, obviously, the cleanup has occurred and the damage has been done. What's the best way to look at addressing this as far as any kind of replanting or?
I do have a list of trees and plants that are native to this area that actually grow in, with that vegetation, and if you wanna.
So I think it's a little premature on the species. As long as they're native, my recommendation is do a restoration planting. That's a fairly significant one. The list of plants could be included in it. I think that typically is, the commission leaves that up to me approving, like the details.
Yeah.
The big thing here is the kind of what percentage of the area is gonna get restored. So it's picking a line that the commission's like, okay, that's a reasonable amount, and then they hand that off to me to work with you guys on a planting plan and a restoration plan. Because whether they do sweet pepper bush or blueberries, the commission typically doesn't care. It's more,
We're not gonna
what's the
get-
wedge, what's the
We're not gonna
area?
get involved in counting out plants. We're gonna leave
Okay.
that to our agent, as far as, I'm not gonna say you have to do, 15 of these, 3 of those, 2.
Wait, so where is that pond that you had a picture of in this?
That's in where it says town of Georgetown.
And
Oh,
here
it's all in
is
here.
It's in there,
Okay,
yeah.
It's all in there.
Is this the
Wetland.
silt sock?
That's the one that
Okay.
has been recently installed.
That
The-
is in this photograph here?
Yes.
Okay.
So the original one on the approved permit for the septic system was a different configuration. The septic system originally was gonna be in the backyard, out of our jurisdiction. So if you look at the septic system, there's a 100-foot buffer line.
Right.
The original main construction activity was that septic system. And, just kind of creep forward as part of the cleanup.
So originally, has it changed?
They have a new septic system in.
So what is shown on this plan is what was executed?
Correct.
Okay, so,
And then that highlighted area in front of it was the area that technically no permits were issued for work.
so where are these trees that you photographed? Are they in?
That's actually in the wetland. I think it was just our example of
Okay.
extent of the dead trees, but.
So they're still there? You
Oh, yeah.
haven't cut
No, we
anything
they're still
down
there.
in there?
So the front edge of that yellow line is where that silt fence is. So they did not go into the wetlands. There was no direct wetland impact. And I think that yellow line is fairly representative. It's probably 15 feet away from the wetlands.
I don't have a yellow line.
They do. You have to share them. Rebecca's not good at sharing. Pictures, mapping.
So, how far is the road? I mean, the wetlands are actually very close to the road. in
So
front.
They're right
if you look to the
next to
right of
it.
that map, you can see the edge of North Street. It kind of cuts in. That town-owned parcel is a great big wedge.
As you drive by there, you can see the wetland is like
Correct.
right there.
Barely see through the wetlands to the subject property. It's a pretty dense wetland, considering its size.
Well, it could be enhanced radically. It's actually not a very,
That's not a healthy system.
it's not a
Which is,
healthy
which is,
system.
but which is why there should be increased buffer. If this was permitted through the regular process, I think the commission wouldn't have permitted as much activity inside the 50, because that's the
Right.
buffer that's necessary to help the health of this wetland. So I think that's the area that you should focus on as far as the restoration. Trying to get back as much of that 50 as possible.
Yeah, so
Keeping
you
in
took the
mind.
tire out of that pond?
Nope,
No, it's
still in there.
Oh,
We didn't go in there at all.
right.
So the tire
wanna
was in
take it out?
this photo?
Yeah. I just-
Take the tire
It
out?
was the lowest hanging fruit in the whole discussion. I mean, at some point we'll go there,
There's
but
a couple. That's just a picture of one. There's about 4 in there.
They just
That's-
fell
that's
off
just
the
one.
car.
Yeah, they just rolled.
Nah, I'm pretty sure they were rolled in there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
so
mean,
the
you
only
can-
thing is
you
with the
can see
disturbed
that this
area, you
is-
get the invasives in quickly too.
Yeah. I
and,
mean,
you know.
it's not going to be that long. I mean, if we can work out a restoration plan to the commission's satisfaction, I think.
So what is the
time.
kind of vegetation that's in there currently?
Is there any invasives in there that we need to be concerned
I
about?
didn't see any, no.
And
So I
there's
mean, it really seems,
Not
we-
from that
at this
side.
point, we need to come up with a reasonable planting plan on that first part of the lot.
And in the,
Yeah.
now, keep in mind, like, you can see a little marked up existing driveway.
I was just gonna
So
say that.
to the right side, to be fair, this is a really tight lot. This house and driveway been there for a long time. They're really tight up against the wetland. So
Yeah,
the concept
wetlands
of
are
doing a
probably
restoration.
Wetlands are probably grown.
Correct.
when that house
But
was made.
I love the idea of doing a full restoration plan of the 50-foot buffer, but keep in mind, that brings it up to the front steps of the house and 90% of their driveway. So when I say a restoration plan and trying to capture more of that 50-foot to create more buffer to the wetlands,
Curve it around
it's
there.
not on the driveway side, because that was kind of an existing area. I'm really trying to focus on the highlighted yellow, because that's the new activity that was done without a permit, and it's the closest area that the buffer could be restored and add some value to the resources. So you're
Yeah, I
talking
mean,
about improving
I-
it, that's where it's at.
I don't think it makes sense to try and restore the resource area like right adjacent to the house. I mean, you really have to kind of cut out
Correct.
an
I'm
L.
sorry, what?
And I think a lot of that was already existing, to be fair, right? The driveway's been there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't go beyond your limit,
Agreed.
so they did the damage over here. We're all acknowledging it happened, but over by the driveway's been there forever. There's really nothing to capture unless you're looking for mitigation on top of the other activities. And that might be for another discussion, right, when it comes to the NOI. But that's not part of this discussion, or at least I don't think it should be.
But obviously, I think part of it should be if there's any debris in the resource area itself, tires, i.e. anything
I
else,
was-
refrigerators, anything else we might find out
I was
there.
kind of waiting till after the commission approved whatever the project was and as part of the moving forward. At this point, I put a stop work order on the entire property. I didn't want to kind of, okay, now go get that tire and do that. I just wanted to wait till
No,
the
let's do it
commission
all
approved
as
everything
one-
and do it as one project.
One project.
So, as I recall, I live around the corner. This wetland does seem to connect. is it to the, if you're looking at your property, to the left, there is rather a large wetland to
On
that
the-
side. This doesn't connect into there?
On the other side of the road, or
No, on your side.
To the left of the house, facing the house.
Yes.
there's a house there and there's 200-300
Oh, wait,
feet?
there are.
I don't think
Yeah.
Sorry, I would like, some sort of,
The house next to us has all the wetlands next to it.
okay.
Talking
It's
the-
not
the
ours.
one- The
Right,
one to your
okay.
right?
No, if you're looking at a house to the
Right.
left, they have all the
Well, yeah, if
wetlands
you're, if
next
you're
to
on the
them.
street looking to the, if you're at the street looking to the left, yes, there is a.
Yeah, on that, there's another house between us
Right.
and another lot, then it's wet. Yeah, that's not
It's a
near
shame
that.
that probably connected at some point.
White House went in.
I mean, anyway, it is what it is.
So
Okay.
at one point, we were having a discussion, I just suggested a restoration area, starting off kind of up by the 50 and then tapering off to the existing silt fence. I don't know if you guys had a chance,
This
you
corner.
did see it, yeah, I don't know what you thought generically of that.
I don't think we were
This
opposed,
area here.
that's it, that corner, like,
No,
don't even
that's
go.
where,
That's,
that's
I mean,
why
I
I
know we
wanted
were
to put that
jumping ahead here.
dogwood and,
Steve only wants
and
to
then,
address
you
the
know,
yellow.
some
Practical.
natural mulch and some other
Beneficial
plantings. That's where the
She's in here,
blueberries,
it's really
Mhm.
thin.
fill that all in.
Yeah, yeah.
Then you can block the street with the dogwood and some arborvitaes, so you can have some privacy.
Yep.
Because that whole corner, you can actually see right out to the street, and I'd like to stop that.
Yep, okay. So by the next meeting, I could probably work with them on a restoration plan.
Can it
Um,
curve up to the 75-foot using that silt stock?
I would, yeah, I would, I think once the commission gets a kind of read on this and authorizes me to work with them on that, I'd probably be a little bit more aggressive than our original proposal. So that wedge, I think, was a little small. The tree line on the plan shows kind of little squiggly lines that follow the silt fence.
That's what I'm looking at.
That was kind of the original tree line. I think originally I kind of forgot, I was picturing this was all lawn and disturbed and trash. There was some trees that were cut in that area, so I think you're starting off closer to the 75 and tapering down to the, would probably make more sense.
So-
But
so,
again, that was
yeah.
kind of something I can work with them on.
Follow
And
the,
L
follow
to
the
the
silt
75.
barrier up to 75,
So roughly
and kind of cut over here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
so this can here,
Come
instead
down.
of like a straight line,
That's
kind of more
probably
like
poison ivy.
that. A nice flowing line versus a straight line or something.
Or bittersweet or something.
But it's a detail we can work
Okay.
out,
Right.
as long as the commission's okay with that. So on these, we don't need a vote, we're just, it's a discussion and giving kind of guidance to me
And
and how
we
to
already,
proceed
as I recall, we already ratified the EO
at the last meeting.
at the last meeting.
Correct.
And there are, right now, it was an EO, there were no fines.
Correct.
The way we approved it.
Correct.
Do we know exactly how many trees came down or not?
Within the 100 foot? Do you have any rough idea?
Within the 100 foot, I can tell you there was two trees. One in the corner that was dead, and one I had to take out to get the pickup and the van out because it was one grew through the pickup and the van was on the other side. And that was probably between 75 and 100 feet was where that other tree was taken out. But other than that, we haven't cut nothing in the front, and cut nothing out of there.
Now, was this actually separate action from the septic? The septic was already done, and then you.
No,
Well,
they couldn't
no,
get to the
we-
septic because
Okay.
of the camper, there was a carport, the pickup truck. They couldn't get in around the house with all
So-
the stuff there.
So did you cut it, or the company that was doing the septic?
No, I went in and cleaned it and got everything out of the way so they could get in. Because they had to take the old septic out, and everything was over here, a dry well.
Who did the septic?
Briscoe,
Briscoe.
I drove one. Yeah, and we got it done a little cheaper if I cleaned it up.
This is the My Map. It's not in color and it's kind of hard to read, but you can kind of see the structures that were in the way in the boat. And this is kind of that tree line on the map, on the plot plan. It shows a little squiggly line to the left of that camper.
Okay, it is close.
Can I ask, though, that's a lot of disturbance within the 100. Like, it may not have been trees that came down, but there's a lot of grading, there's a lot of vegetation that's been taken out of there.
Mhm.
I mean, it's not just the, beyond the 100 that we're talking about for the new septic.
Correct. I mean, that's almost off of the discussion 'cause it's out of our
Oh,
jurisdiction.
sure.
So
but
that was a
When we're
lot.
talking about disturbance for the new septic,
Correct.
this within the 100 up to the front is radically altered
And I
in
don't-
here.
Excuse me, sorry.
I'm
I don't
sorry.
know if this is irrelevant to what you're saying, but a lot of it was like sandy, like. you
Yeah,
know, not
gravel. There was no grass, and then they
And we.
they
our
probably went
hopes
in
are
about
to-
1,000 times in and out with trucks.
And our hopes is to make, you know, I think you might have told me that like a yard of grass is better for wildlife, so like, that's where we're trying to head with respecting you guys.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's just finding the right line for that. I mean, if we can capture the 50 as much as possible over
Yeah, I
there,
would suggest the 50.
but then it has to taper off at some point as it gets close to the front steps, right? So you can't capture that, just through the disturbed area, try to capture as much of that 50.
So the 75.
Up to the 70.
Start maybe at the 75 and taper it at the other end. So instead of a straight line across, taper it.
And
cut
because
it.
it's, a- you know, I look at it a little different too, because it's an existing
Laura.
property that, you know,
Wait a minute.
that,
Too many.
since it's an existing property and it doesn't make sense to try and do too much restoration too close to the house, because that's not really that practical.
Right.
Just go up like this,
Yeah.
over, up, 75 that way. Which would look more curved and more natural anyway.
Right.
Because in reality, you know, we approve it and it never really, you know, it's just like when we see people mowing around, stone bounds,
Yeah.
and they complain they're crashing in them with a lawnmower, so.
That's actually a really good point. That restoration line should have no cut stone bounds.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
We can doodle that up too.
for future generations, so they don't encroach.
Thank you.
So is the commission okay with me working on that restoration plan tentatively?
Is everyone okay?
And you'll pull,
Yes.
they'll pull the tires out of that wetland
I
out
will.
of the pool?
Yes, please.
You sure?
Oh, we
Because I
have
kind of
to-
want those
we have
gone.
to-
Unless they're attached to them.
Yeah, this is a car or something.
Sentimental value?
If I can make a suggestion, if the,
Excuse me,
Yeah.
wasn't this meeting supposed to be at 7:30?
Sarah, this,
What meeting?
what meeting are you talking about?
this is the enforcement order discussion, sir, not the open notice of intent. We have not opened up the notice of intent yet. It just happens to be the same applicant, same property. There was an enforcement order issued.
388 North Street?
Correct, sir.
Well,
There's
I
two-
am in a butter to this property, and I'm
Okay.
listening to all this.
There's two
and,
different,
you know,
sir, there's two different parts of this. We're gonna open that as a public hearing, in a little bit, but we have to deal with this as an initial part.
Oh,
There's two parts of it. We'll get to it.
okay, excuse me then,
No problem.
okay.
As, just to let you know, as an abutter, you will have a chance to speak related to this also.
Okay.
But we like to kind of have this discussion first, then open it up to the public.
Because
So
before
we won't forget you.
before we legally open it, we deal with this first. This is an
Okay.
enforcement issue,
I'm very sorry.
okay?
It is confusing. We haven't done it this way before.
All right. So, I mean, I'm okay with the agent working as far as the enforcement action. I mean, I'm not gonna specify, as I said earlier, you know, every specific, push that we put out there. There's a degree of flexibility that needs to occur in the restoration. But before we do anything else, as far as the new NOIs or construction, I wanna make sure this comes to fruition as far as, otherwise we find out these things never get really fixed, and it's like,
Right.
the new project gets built and the enforcement order kind of is floating out there. All right.
So the other four projects are all requesting continuations.
Can
And-
I just ask a quick question?
Yeah.
So we're gonna work with you on the restoration, the enforcement order is still in place until that gets resolved, okay?
The EO will be in place until, you know, the commission feels that everything has been completed, and, you know, EOs can stay open for years. But it's our legal mechanism to make sure that these things get completed. Otherwise, EOs can have fines or they cannot have fines. It's really, you know, it's a legal mechanism to push the issues to closure.
Okay.
So the other four, the next four hearings, Carl, are all requesting continuations. My suggestion is while these guys are sitting where they're
Yeah,
sitting, just to
since
open up that.
Since it's about 7:30, I actually can open up the NOI, but just remind me to open up and continue these other hearings, otherwise we will forget them. All right. Okay. It being on or after 7:30, I am going to open up a new notice of intent for 388 North Street, DEP 161-0881. That's grading and site work within a 100-foot buffer zone. And again, for the record, if you could identify yourself for the record, please.
Scott Perry.
Corey Leahy.
Thank you. And
So this is a very similar looking plot plan without the yellow on it.
Do I have that?
So this is the original plan that was hand modified by the applicant, new erosion control. So instead of the one that I marked up had a 90-degree turn to silt fence, this is a straight line silt fence.
Are we looking at this
Yeah.
again?
That's it, correct.
Okay.
do I have
This
green
is a-
cards? I need to see the green cards.
So just to kind of tie this in with the previous, as part of the enforcement discussion, they had mentioned that they had hopes of doing some other improvements. Not mentioned in the previous discussion was a pile of loam that was dumped, thank you, that was put to the right of the driveway so they could regrade that area. They have some kind of vision and plans for the future
Okay, I
of this
see
property.
loam seed, is that what we're talking about?
So that's what they're
Or-
proposing, correct.
Okay.
So just generically, the driveway would be moved to the right. They have 2 proposed additions, and all of the disturbed area that we talked about previously would be loamed and seeded. Pretty,
Where's
Is
the
that-
driveway current? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I get it.
so the existing driveway would be loamed and seeded. Is that a fairly, I mean, I don't mean
Yeah.
to steal your thunder, but that's the gist of what
Right.
you're gonna do. Okay.
Yeah, to move the driveway away from the wetlands, get it out of that area.
And to eventually down the road attach to the garage if you could put that on.
So, just before we get into the weeds too much, this is, keep in mind, a hand-drawn modified, so we have a stamped engineered plan to scale with some fairly significant activities that are hand-drawn in.
How old is this plan? What's the
Not old.
date
It's
on
with-
this plan?
The plan is within a year or two, 'cause
Okay.
the septic system was just done.
Oh.
So the
okay,
wetlands
okay.
delineation is-
Oh, this is
Yeah, this is
from
new,
when
yeah.
you did the septic,
What are the,
okay.
what are the dimensions of the family room you have drawn on here?
The family room would actually be, bless you, would be 18 deep, and it'd be the same width as the house. It would only be coming off the house about 18 feet, and it's still, it's out of the 50 still.
18 by what?
I believe the house is 22 feet deep.
So just to kind of go back to that point, we have not confirmed the wetland lines, right? We have not confirmed the wetland lines, and there's a fairly significant amount of proposed work that's not kind of engineered to put on it. Now, I'm not saying it has to be, I'm just clarifying, because that's a little bit unusual for the commission to accept kind of new, larger projects with this technique. Given the plan was stamped and engineered, it's comforting that it's probably accurate, but the wetland line has not been confirmed. So I'm just throwing that out there, and the commission can do with that as you wish.
And the garage is what, a 24 by 24 add-on?
The garage would be 26 by 24. That's to the right of the house.
So both of those activities, per regulations, are supposed to be outside the 75.
They're within.
I know, see, they're supposed to be
But the
outside.
75 isn't on here, but just ballparking
Correct.
it.
So-
It
so
looks like
just-
everything is
The whole
within.
house.
So
Within, yeah.
Most of the house
The
is-
entire family room is, and the garage has a corner that's outside of the 75. So the statement was made that they both are outside the 50, but the standard is 75. So it's great they're outside the 50, but the standard is 75.
Can you move the family room to the back of the house?
The back house actually has ledge behind the house. That was our initial plan, to go off the back, and then there's actually ledge there. They found it when they were doing the septic. But that was our initial plan, to keep it back. And that's why we actually shortened it up from 20 to 18.
So the driveway being relocated is actually a good thing, right? It's further away, less compaction. What's left behind will be restored.
What kind of driveway?
Gravel,
Okay.
gravel with gravel, correct? You're gonna replace with gravel, or you're gonna pave it?
We'd like pavement.
Okay, that doesn't say that. I guess I was presuming gravel, because it doesn't state paved.
Okay.
So you're proposing to pave, so that's a pretty substantial waiver
So,
also.
so you're saying the entire back is ledge, or you don't really?
Behind the house
Yeah.
has a pretty big ledge rock there that they hit doing the septic.
But they weren't digging behind the new garage I mean, you say behind the house, the septic is far, far left.
Well,
and
there
they
was a
had ledge.
tank right behind the house that they removed, right off the.
Oh, the crushed and,
Yeah, and that's where they found it, doing that, in the old field. Yeah, and then that, as you can see on there, there's the pipe that goes from the house to the septic.
so it used to go straight to the old tank, roughly.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That
So
went
if
straight
if
off.
there was an old tank there, and where was the original septic or cesspool, whatever it was?
There's probably a pit.
Yeah, there was two of them.
So I have to kind of amend, I incorrectly presume that was graveling that it's getting further away than the existing, but that doesn't really get any mitigation points because it's paved, and that's actually a pretty substantial waiver, because you're talking paving within, 5-6 feet of a wetland, and I wish I had asked that question sooner, because that's a really big deal.
I mean, if we have to keep it gravel, that's,
It's just adding up the list of different
Right.
things that we need to investigate and address.
it's been gravel all this time, I mean.
Correct.
I mean, if we were, if you're talking waivers and too many, that's the
Yeah,
nature of
I mean, I'll be honest, I had a gravel driveway, and I used to pitch it to the commission that I love gravel driveways because it's impervious. I actually very much dislike them.
There
And
are a
I
lot of
paved my driveway because they're such a pain in maintenance.
Maintenance-wise.
A lot of the sediment wash, so you have the petroleum basis that flows in, which is horrible, but the sediment that comes out of these driveways, you'd be surprised how much of the dust and debris washes out in heavy rainstorms. And then you have to replace it, and that back and forth. So I'm just saying it has to be acknowledged that this is an existing
This
structure.
entire wetland is full of runoff from
Correct.
a major
So
road.
the last time the commission denied a project with paving this close and went to court and they won, it was new construction. So to Carl's point, this is existing. It just needs to be acknowledged. That's a pretty substantial waiver. The last one, a couple times we have precedent, it's based on new construction. This is not new. So I'm not saying don't pitch it and ask for it.
Steve, what about
Just being
the
realistic.
block driveways with the?
Impervious pavers.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, and they're
I
pretty.
mean, you capture some, I think,
But you gotta
long-term, they
maintain
turn.
those things,
yeah.
you gotta
To
sweep them.
vacuum them.
No,
sweep
that's
them.
pervious pavement. You can't sweep that technology. So over time, they lose their perviousness. It's just like pervious pavement. Even well-constructed, well-maintained, the organics cause them to fail. So it's a nice angle, and if we can do it, great, because it has a lot of benefits, but it's not the end all
So
be
the
all.
wetland flagging on this plan like peters out near the driveway. I don't understand where the wetland goes near
So
the driveway.
this wetland delineation was created just for the septic system. So they delineated just what they needed for the
So where
septic
does
system.
it go? It
Well,
comes down
I
to
think-
wetland flag A12. Does
Correct.
it go straight to the road from there, or?
Don't know.
So
I
is
don't
it
know.
just, okay, so
I mean,
I'd
it doesn't
like,
go. It doesn't go past the driveway, right? It can't. It doesn't go.
No.
It doesn't go to the north. So
no.
Who did
So
this
it-
wetland flagging?
I do not know. Scanlon. Oh, Jim Scanlon.
Mr. Scanlon?
He's not here.
Yes, he is.
Yes, he
right
is.
there.
He's
He's
right
hiding.
there.
He's hiding.
He's smiling in the
He's
back
not
of the
here for
room.
this case, by the way. Just happens that his is the plan I was working off of. And we're not going to pull you into this. Don't
Yeah,
worry.
that would be the guy right there.
388 North Street. Excuse me. Yep.
So it looks like there's this little finger of wetland that comes up near
Yep.
the driveway.
But
And the
again-
rest of it kind of peters away. I'd be
actually-
interested to know what's in here.
There's nothing in there, and it's higher than the rest. I'm not really sure what that is, but it is a lot higher, the grade,
I'm just
compared
thinking
to,
that this
everything
is
else.
this is kind of a rich restoration potential in here to
Mm-hmm.
mitigate the runoff from, the driveway.
So if we go back, to the first plan with the yellow, and we impose this new family room, it really jumps right into this disturbed area.
Correct.
So, I mean, I would like to see an exploration whether it could go to either further to the back of the lot or on the other side. Not saying it can, but at least as part of an alternatives analysis look.
Wait, or it's already disturbed. If there's more mitigation, if Steve could go out and look more, maybe there's, it's already disturbed.
He can also move, scooch back this way. He
To
can
the
scooch back
to this
way.
corner.
We had talked about potentially going above the garage, going up versus sideways. Is that a viable option, or is that not good?
Yeah, I mean, if we can't go left, then yeah, we could go up and the garage to the right and just go above.
So I think when I originally looked at this.
Second floor in the garage.
Yeah, so when I originally looked at this, I'll be honest with you, the driveway wasn't on my radar because I thought it was gravel for gravel. The garage is at roughly 60 feet where 75 is required, but it's further away from the resources than the existing. So that tends to get a little, it gets less scrutiny. The new family room is newer, closer, very close in a very heavily disturbed area.
I mean,
Early on, I was
Is there
pushing.
a garage? There isn't a garage. That's a
There's
new
gonna be new,
car
so,
garage.
Correct.
so it was
So
just
we have two structures being proposed.
put a second floor
New
in the
family room,
garage.
new garage.
Right.
Early on, I was really concerned about the commission's opinion on the new family room, so I asked, is it possible to go up over the garage so we can permit one new structure that's getting pretty close to the setbacks and try to get rid of the one that's really close and is precedent setting. That's a big deal for new
It's huge.
construction.
I kinda like that as an option. I mean, obviously, they had an existing driveway there. It doesn't make sense to deny them a driveway,
Right,
obviously.
but it's the paving part that
Yeah.
adds that little extra zing. And also, if that family room wasn't there, the restoration area could get a little bit larger as mitigation for the new car garage is a waiver to the regulations. The driveway paving is a waiver. So maybe beefing up that restoration plan. And if that new family room is there, we're not gonna be able to encroach, you can't push that restoration plan towards
No,
that
because
building.
you gotta have some buffer space between the
Yeah,
structure.
you have to give them more than a
and-
6-foot side yard.
Exactly, I mean, that's not practical, because it'll end up,
So, as alternatives to where this family room is here, I mean, if it is possible in any way to move it to the back of the house or over the garage, that
Right.
those would be more attractive
It's
to.
probably more attractive financially, and that's not really our call, to put it on top, because the building up for us is out, less
Right.
foundation.
Is this full
But
foundation or
your
slab?
house is a one
It'd be a full.
floor house, right?
Right.
It's a ranch, so you're gonna end up with a giant garage with a.
Yeah, I'd go up
Wanna
across
go
the whole
above
thing.
house, too.
and
You
just-
would go up and across your whole house.
Right.
You
And
would
then-
turn that into a 2-floor.
Yeah, and do away with the family room and just go up and over instead
Right.
of going,
Right.
making a bigger
The
footprint.
colonial instead
to the
of a
left.
ranch.
And then if you guys could all just pitch in a couple bucks, help me out.
Oh,
That'd be
yeah.
great.
That's
Get
us.
right on.
Well, I mean, at this point, we'd ask you to explore it. I'm not saying, we haven't come to a conclusion yet.
Right.
But, as part of our requirements, that we ask for alternatives analysis of, what are the options? I mean, that's something to look at.
Yeah, definitely not opposed to, staying away from there and going up and going to the
Because,
right.
we're trying, we look at, again, we understand the concept of trying to improve the property, some damage was done, we're gonna try and improve that. But we don't wanna necessarily go build a structure right in the area
Right.
that got cleared again, that not necessarily improvement. So, we look at these alternatives to see if there's
Should be
anything else we can do.
restored with
So is that reasonable that I work with them on tightening up some of these things?
I think
The
so.
restoration, but
Does-
also some mitigation for the NOI.
Do
And
they-
what about stormwater? With the new, if it were new construction, would be requesting that? right?
Typically, smaller homes are exempt for like the higher standards of that. That's more for like subdivisions and commercial.
Okay.
I think, to be fair, this is a heavily disturbed site. No matter what they do, it's gonna be an improvement.
Right, yeah, okay.
Grass is better than what was there, but
Yeah.
restoration and vegetation is much better. My hope and plan.
Does the house have gutters on it?
No.
And that would be
So that
kind of,
would help.
if you were gonna do an improvement, I would suggest that and do.
So that would be
do a-
mitigation.
Right, as again, like a dry well type of thing, so you
Right.
could,
I want to put gutters, but I didn't want to do it yet because that was actually one of the things I wanted to go over because I didn't know how you guys felt about gutters and
If it goes out back into like some type of dry well, that would actually be mitigation.
Right.
Yeah.
So right now, there's no gutters. That would actually be mitigation for some of the damage being done, putting something new in a 75-foot buffer. And if you're gonna redo the whole roof line, you can tie them all in together
Right.
versus just the new construction.
So these areas that I outlined in yellow, where you've written loam and seed and loam and seed all around the driveway, I would propose that we use those as mitigation and restoration areas with
Versus lawn.
plantings.
Versus
Yeah,
lawn.
Not lawn, but wetland plantings or
some sort of
native
natural,
plantings.
some sort of natural mix,
Yep.
a low height natural mix maybe.
So
I
that
mean,
would,
obviously you don't wanna.
that would mitigate that whole driveway area.
So what maybe I can do is, I'll do a site visit and I'll kind of explain
Go
the
over it.
logic of where Laura's going.
Question, does
It
anyone
depends on
wanna
what the
go,
land
does
is.
anyone feel they need to go out to take a look at the site, or you gonna do a drive-by, or, I mean,
I
it's right near the
can.
road.
Laura, you
I
available?
could easily meet you over there.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll go.
Is that okay with you guys?
What day you wanna go? I'll get some food in the grill.
Oh, great.
Have a cookout.
No. I mean, it's a informal, just, I mean, I would go out there by myself. I think before we determine what those are gonna turn into, I think it's important to see what's there and the
Yep.
kind of lay of the land. Does it make more sense for one area to be lawn in another spot? So on the north side of that new driveway, we don't know what's above that area, so you're gonna do a little restoration project, and then there's lawn on the other side. Like, I think it's important to tie it all together, so I just don't want to lock down all the restoration mitigation. I think that's a field.
But I wanna make sure we keep,
Test.
keep the enforcement order still on track and deal with that, it's like almost separately, and then this notice of
Now,
intent.
is the commission okay with the restoration work for the enforcement order being done at the same time? I mean, if you're gonna be doing all this restoration,
as long as
it's
it's
like one's
done and
restoration, one's
documented.
mitigation. So they're all the same thing. I'd rather have them do it all at once. No, technically, you want it done before, and then you allow them to do the notice of intent. I think in this case, just given the site, we should do
Should
it
be a
all at once.
holistic plan that's executed intentionally.
So I'll send out an email Monday, and you guys to coordinate the site and time.
Mhm.
I don't know.
From my perspective is, we can look at plans, but it makes sometimes a lot more sense to just take a few minutes on the ground out
Yeah.
there on a site, and you get a little better picture of really what they're talking
Yeah,
about.
I think
as
that
opposed to-
I think that area's pretty shaded where you were pointing to the north. So I was going there.
Are there
I just want to
any,
make sure the commission's okay with it.
at this point, are there any more commissioner questions? Because I'm gonna open it up to abutters. If there are no more questions from commissioners, I will open up the notice of intent for 388 North Street to abutters. If you would like to comment, you can do so. Please identify yourself for the record, and you can make your statements. Come on up if you like, sir.
I'm George Tolman at 389 North Street.
Mhm.
I bought my property there in 1958,
Okay.
built my house in 1960 when I moved in. I have lived across from that property before that property was even built in there, before they built a home there. I would like to commend them for the job that they've done to clean that mess up. They've taken at least 18 to 20 container loads of trash out of that property. It blows my mind to look over there beforehand and see all the trash. And since they've cleaned it up, they've done a remarkable job. The only problem is there right now, all that wetlands in front is all vegetated. It's a mess. Before that, the permission was given by the Chick people that owned that property before Scott and his wife bought it, to put a drain under that driveway, which would alleviate the water problem that these other folks had over there, filling their cellar up. They pumped that down into that swamp, which would run across the other property, which back in 1978, the water was so bad down there, it overran the road. I contacted the town, they come up, they put a drain pipe across the other piece of property to drain that water out of there. That alleviated a big problem down there, because before then, they were pumping water from the corner of Thurlow Street and north, down through their property, down into that wetlands, which flooded the roadway there and so forth.
Okay.
They have done a great job down there. I have no problems with what they're gonna do down there. There is multiple wildlife in that area and so forth, and it doesn't bother a thing,
We appreciate your comments, sir.
really.
Could you show me where, that culvert is? Here's North Street.
That North
Here's
Street right
their
there?
property, and I believe you're over here, the other
I'm
side of
across
North
the street. Okay, let's, just
It's
bring,
hard to
bring
tell.
that by me when,
Oh, I see, look, we have this, here's their property on North Street, and you're over here.
I'm over here.
Where's the culvert?
The culvert, come across through here to meet this other culvert that goes down through wetlands. And back in 1978, I approached one of the boards, and the Essex County Conservation was gonna dig a trench out through the wetlands there to alleviate the water problem, which they never done. The culvert was put in there, which alleviated a big problem down there.
Okay,
Essex County, were they talking mosquito control
must
maybe?
be a long time ago.
Mosquito control,
Oh,
way
right.
back then.
Where
I
was the
still have
flooding?
the paperwork on that, if you would care to see it at some point.
They're kind of restricted in what they can do these days.
Well, I know,
But, you know, things have changed as far as the regulatory world.
no kidding. I know.
So
So I
Steve,
just want to express my feelings, and I think they've done a great job over there, and I would like to see them do whatever they want over there, because it's not gonna bother me, and I don't think it's gonna bother any other neighbors down there for what they intend to do over there.
Again, we appreciate the
And they're
comments.
doing a
And,
great job.
yeah, I guess
we
you know,
appreciate it.
from my perspective, I didn't realize there was so much debris on the site. It's one of those
Oh, there
places
was,
you
believe
drive
me.
by and
Yeah.
it's overgrown and you don't notice it.
I
You
counted
would never
over-
know. People didn't even know there was a house in there. That's how
I
bad it
counted
was.
over 15 container loads of trash that they took out of there and whatever. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I
Thank
just
you,
wanted
sir.
to express my opinion.
Comments, Steve, do you know about the drain in there? Is there,
There's not familiar with that, no.
I'm sure we probably don't even have any records of it, of what it is. I wonder if.
I was not aware it was there.
I wonder if it's clogged up or
I w-
anything.
I
Yeah,
walked
we
the property
maybe
very
should have a
quickly.
look at that. Can
Well,
we
what-
get maybe Pete Durkee to have a look at it?
Yeah, when we go out to look at the restoration mitigation proposals, I'll walk the wetland more.
Okay.
At the time, I just gave it a quick walkthrough. I was not, bringing my chest waders to see what was in the wetlands.
Can I just make a record? We're going to look at alternative sites for the family room or alternative ideas for the,
Yeah.
well, not we.
Right.
Them and me.
And the, question of the paving of the driveway.
And Steve will put together the planting, work with the
Oh, yeah.
owner on the planting,
So there's
on
a
restoration.
restoration and also mitigation, right? It's kind of two, they're all the same, but they're different.
The
And-
restoration plan and plantings.
And right, and Steve and an agent or two, Steve and a commissioner or two or three
Mhm.
will go out and take a look at the site. And we will then need a continuation date.
And also, in questions about the culvert.
Check on the butters, there might be more.
Excuse me one more time. If at any time you'd like my assistance to show you where this is, just give me a call.
Sounds good, thank you, sir.
I'll give you my phone number.
Mr. Tolman?
Yep,
Mm-hmm.
978-457-3073.
Okay, thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Mr. Tolman. All right, do we have everything we need at this point?
I just want to check on the butters, if there's any others.
Any other butters to 388 North? If you'd like to identify yourself for the record, you may comment if you would like.
Can I ask a question?
You may.
My name is Brian Kimball. I'm at 2 Phillips Avenue. I guess I'm not a direct butter.
Okay, I know where Phillips is. You're off of North
Thurlow.
Back.
Thurlow. There's a little
Yeah,
street there. We actually own some conservation land at the end of Phillips.
that's right, and which we use continuously to access the railroad bed. And part of our meanderings through there, well east, I believe, of this project, is a trail we've been using for 40 or 50 years to access the railroad bed, where we do mountain biking and hiking and animal watching, nature walks, that kind of thing with our kids. I was wondering if this project would impact that land well east. It looks like, I borrowed your plan there. There's a.
This is not talking about that project.
Oh, okay. Is this about the former Murray
No,
property?
no,
Oh,
it's not.
I'm in the wrong room.
Oh,
So what?
oh, no, that's 66 Thurlow.
Correct. I'll
Okay.
step outside and explain,
Yes.
find out what's
Oh,
going on.
yes,
You
I know
guys-
that site too.
Yes,
I know.
we do know that site. Okay,
All
that's
too-
not this one.
All too well.
Okay.
Just confused me, boy.
This is
Not your house.
There is a whole series of old trails behind 66
That's right.
Furlongs that come up to Phillips that actually goes, you never know an old cart paths back there.
That's probably what made him think it was the same thing I'm talking about.
Well,
old
debris,
cars and
because there were
things,
old,
yeah.
behind, there was old boats and things behind that
Oh,
place
that-
too.
yeah.
There were like big boats behind there,
Oh,
cabin
and
cruisers
They've been
and.
burying horses out there too. Remember the things? Oh,
Was that
gosh.
the big brown house they tore down? Down there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Excuse me, out of order, please. I'm just wondering if we were continued. I was on at 7:05,
We haven't continued yet.
because you jumped right to 7:30. Are we on the
I
agenda
thought we
tonight?
were
I
continuing.
thought we were continuing you.
I never got notice.
Which hearing was this?
Thurlow Street, 103, 109, Thurlow Street.
103.
I thought we were waiting for the third-party review to be completed.
I never got emailed, phone called. I'm a representative for that property. I
Well,
was never
just-
informed
just-
that it was continued.
Just stand by for a minute. I thought Steve had referenced to me that this was, that you had requested a continuance.
I
If-
did
If not,
absolutely not.
we're about wrapping this one up. We'll jump into that if we need to. It's on the agenda.
Thank you.
No problem. All right.
Right. Do you think we should continue this to next month?
Let's see, let me ask the applicant as far as when you might think you have some additional information as far as your assessment, I mean, timeline.
Assessment.
For,
For the,
as
in
in-
moving the family room, is that what you?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, the hearing part, I mean, the enforcement order is kind of a separate issue, we can
Mhm.
proceed on with that, but as far as, you,
I don't know if this
Getting-
throw things out of order. I think our main concern right now is obviously handling the enforcement order and the landscape. We don't have plans to build
Yep.
anytime too soon.
We'd like to get the landscape going so we can have a lawn, so it's not, so there's no runoff anymore and no dust, and
sure.
if we could.
So, we can always continue to next month and just
Sure.
continue it on, I mean, it's not an issue, we can carry it.
Yeah.
Let's see. I would, all I need is a date and a time. Next meeting is July 18th. Guess we're about ready to continue this one, and apparently the applicant for 103, 109 Thurlow is here. That's not being continued, apparently.
Oh, okay.
So why don't we finish up 388 and continue that, and then we'll jump into 103, 109.
Sounds good.
And I'll entertain a motion to continue 388 North.
July 18th at 7:15.
Okay, is anyone going to make that motion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to continue 388 North Main Street, DEP 1610881, GCC 201909, to July 18th at 7:15 PM.
There's a motion and a second to continue the notice of intent for 388 North Street to July 18th at 7:15 PM. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All abstaining. Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I'll email you Monday. I'll email it.
And since we are out of order, I will step back and, in it being on or after 7:05 PM, I will continue an ANRAD for 103, 109 Thurlow Street, DEP 161-0879. If I could have the applicant and a consultant, and if you could identify yourself, please.
For the record, my name is Bob Grassel from Engineering Land Services.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for the confusion there. My listing said it was continued, but it had a whole list of them, but,
I'm not sure why it was continued. I didn't request it.
that's okay,
I am the representative for my client.
that's okay. So.
Just want to know a status of the report from BSC. We haven't, we paid the fee. We've done all the M account
Yep.
information.
So the paperwork literally got submitted to the accounting department yesterday. We don't contract, I don't allow the contract to go forward until all the paperwork's done. It took a while to get the check. And then there's some accounting paperwork that had to be filled out by the applicant. The final information didn't get to me till earlier this week. I authorized Jillian to start the work. I apologize, I presumed it was gonna be continued because no one stepped ground on the ground yet to start the review. There's
So-
no,
so it
there's
has
no
been done.
update.
Okay.
So it's, the third-party review hasn't been started yet, let alone any feedback or information that's come back.
Do we have a timeline for?
Yeah, she'll be out there within a week and a half. But literally, I didn't sign the contract. Jillian doesn't schedule it till I signed the contract. This contract didn't get emailed till yesterday. So there's no update. We're waiting on the third-party review. There's no other option but to continue.
Okay.
So it's pretty straightforward. You know, we don't sign contracts. Historically, what happened is we signed a contract to start the work and the applicant never sent the check. So there's a policy. We do not start the work till the check's in, all the paperwork's filled out, and it's locked in. Jillian doesn't step on the ground the day after the meeting because you guys authorized her to. There's a process.
Sure, I mean,
to
it
go
has to be a
through.
contract in
Yeah.
place, sure, I mean, that's understandable. So, but she's indicating she can get to it
She'll be out there within the next week.
within a week.
Yep.
Okay.
And
When's the next meeting? Because I'd like to be
July
informed,
18th, so.
If it was, you know,
Well,
it's
if
just like a courtesy email or something.
Yeah, so I mean,
something with what the
since
status-
we've opened it, we're gonna have to continue it, so it's
Yes.
gonna have to be, you know, the next meeting, that's.
I'm just asking for a courtesy email or something, a status of like, I was sitting in the back room and it went right over, you know, right through us. We weren't even called up, so that's why I went out of order.
Well, actually, you didn't go out of order, actually, on my listing, it was kind of out of order, so I didn't see it there, so. I
Sorry.
apologize for not calling you up, so. So we will need a continuation for this,
July 18th at 7:30, please.
July 18th. Does anyone want to make a motion? 7:30 PM.
Mr. Chairman, let's continue. 103, 109 Thurlow Street, DEP 1610879, GCC 2019-07, July 18th at 7:30.
Second.
We have a motion that's been seconded to continue the notice of intent, or the INRAD, I should say, for 103, 109 Thurlow to July 18th at 7:30. Is there any further comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All abstaining?
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, done. And, let's see.
Could probably just go down and do the 7:10, the 7:20. They'll be really quick, just in case there's any abutters here for those.
Okay, let's see, it being on or after 7:10 PM, I'm going to open up a notice of intent continuation for 51 West Main Street. DEP 161-0877, that's construction of a commercial building and 7 townhouses. We have been requested that that be continued.
The third-party review has not been completed yet.
Okay.
Proposing July 18th at 7:45, please.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion for that. And are there any abutters here for 51 West Main Street? Nay, okay. Okay, 7:45. Someone make a motion, please.
Mr. Chairman, let's continue 51 West Main Street, DEP 1610877, GCC 2017-052, July 18th at 7:45.
Second.
We have a motion, it's been seconded to continue 51 West Main Street to July 18th at 7:45 PM. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All abstaining. And it being on or after 7:20, I'm going to reopen a notice of intent for 203 East Main Street. That's construction of a residential recycling drop-off area within the buffer zone to the wetland. And we've also been asked that that be continued. And we're looking for, again, July 18th as the applicant.
Should be ready by then, at
Okay.
8 o'clock. The review letter came out, I sent that to the commission a few days ago. So Jillian's done her initial review,
Yep.
and they're having that discussion.
Okay.
Any abutters to 203 East Main Street? Yes, no? None noted, okay. I'll entertain that motion. 8 o'clock.
Mr. Chairman, let's continue 203 East Main Street, DEP 161-0857, GCC 2018-05, to July 18th at 8 PM.
Second.
There's a motion, it's been seconded to continue the notice of intent for 203 East Main Street to July 18th at 8 PM. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All abstaining. Thank you. And I think we're about caught up at this point. Let's see, and the next item on the agenda is, it being on or after 7:45 PM, I'm going to open a new notice of intent for 1 McGuire Way. That's a septic system upgrade. If I could have the applicant and or consultant, and if you could identify yourself for the record, please.
Good evening. My
Good
name
evening.
is Jim Scanlon. I'm here on behalf of Frank McGuire at 1 McGuire Way.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Green card, okay.
Actually, it's all right, we're before you, having filed the notice of intent as part of a septic system upgrade. The existing property is 1 McGuire Way, which is basically a driveway off of,
What is that?
Orient me a little bit here. 1 McGuire Way.
North Street.
We love to hear,
Parsonage Street.
That's right.
we thought you were in the wrong town.
No,
This is North Groveland.
Sure.
Oh my God.
It's
I'm like, did I mess up?
McGuire Way it's a driveway off
This
of.
is West Newbury, just for you.
Yeah, off of Parsonage Street. Parsonage Street right here. Excuse me. The property has an existing two-bedroom dwelling. Property has, there's wetlands just off the site of the property, located in green, with the 50-foot and the 100-foot buffer zones. The existing system has a septic tank that goes to a D-box right in about there, and then to a soil absorption system.
And the existing system is in failure, I'm
It
assuming?
is in failure, yes. What we're proposing is a new system, which is located pretty much entirely outside of the buffer zone with the exception of the building sewer pipe. The lower level of the dwelling, it's a walkout to the backyard.
Okay.
The pipes go down into the slab and come out, as shown right there. So what we're proposing is to connect to that existing pipe and then redirect it to an area location outside of the buffer zone. So the only work that will be done inside of the buffer zone would be the new building sewer pipe and the abandonment of the existing septic tank, which would include, knocking the top in and bottom and filling it.
So the 100 foot kind of goes right through the house there and that part of it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you're getting rid of that square there, just by the 50.
Correct.
That's and you're filling that. And then this pipe, I'm sorry, I wasn't watching. Where is the pipe, et cetera, off the corner of the house?
Talking that where it says install clean out type of thing?
Exactly.
Oh, is that it?
That's
Okay.
the existing building sewer pipe, correct. And that goes straight into the existing septic tank. We're gonna put in a sweep and redirect it outside of the, over towards.
Is this a
the sewer.
standard, or a Presby, a standard,
Presby is an alternative technology.
yeah. So is this a standard septic?
It is no, this is a Presby system.
Okay.
But it's, we took a reduction in the area. So that's why we have the alternative technology.
Has the Board of Health approved this yet?
Board of Health has approved it, yes.
Have you been out there, Steve?
I have.
Any issues? It's obviously an existing system for replacement.
It's pretty straightforward.
Yep. Any comments from commissioners? You or me?
So it's just a bit of trenching for the pipe? Is that
Correct.
it?
And the abandonment.
And the
It's- yeah.
abandonment.
Any abutters to 1 McGuire Way? None noted, at least I can't see one gentleman back there. He's hiding behind the plan. I just see the top of the head going back and forth, that's all I can see. Well, this looks pretty straightforward to me. And it is a replacement.
What's the date on the plan?
5/14/19.
And
As for technical, like,
obviously, the wetland line hasn't, we have not taken a look at that, so we can't prove that.
Yeah, standard conditions.
Yeah. I'm sorry, you were gonna make a comment.
I have a question, just that it seems like there's so little work involved in our jurisdiction. I was wondering if it was possible that something like this would come to us as an RDA.
So, a number of years ago, the commission kind of did an informal policy that components, typically a septic system, like the leaching facility, where's the line? Tank, is it a pipe? The commission just determined that it's any septic system component, anything that passes the effluent. So, we've had a couple of them. This is your second one, just clipping the jurisdiction with the pipe, which is, at the time, the commission didn't want to go on that slippery slope, so they just said any component is
Right.
considered.
So I mean, in a simple NOI like this, it's really no, probably more complicated than an RDA in the sense, because it's still a simple,
Yeah.
it's a simple process.
The fee is the same as an RDA.
So there's really not a huge
Use a
advantage.
notification to abutters, add in the paper is the same. The only difference is the registering the order of conditions. So that's the only additional cost versus doing an RDA.
And you needed to do all of the engineering plans, et cetera, for the Board of Health, so that was something that needed to be done
This-
anyway, too.
And this codified thing a little more, the RDA, which, negative or positive determination, so it really doesn't say a lot from the conservation perspective.
That's a good
Right.
question, but we addressed this about 10 years ago and kind of came up with an informal kind of process procedure for that.
I was just thinking in terms of homeowner costs, but because all of this engineering and the drawings had to be done anyway,
He's not here
then.
for the boss.
I'm
The nuts
sorry,
and-
what?
The nuts and the bolts of this is septic system is from the
Right.
Board of Health perspective.
Okay.
So, that being said, I'll entertain a motion, if someone would like to make one on this particular site. It looks pretty straightforward to me.
So, Mr. Chairman, let's approve 1 McGuire Way, new septic, DEP 1610882, GCC 2019-10.
Not
Second.
accepting the wetland
Not
line.
accepting the wetland.
3-second.
We have a motion, and it's been seconded to approve the notice of intent for 1 McGuire Way. DEP 161-0882, GCC 2019-10, not accepting the wetland line. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All abstaining. I will entertain a motion to close 1 McGuire Way.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to close 1 McGuire Way.
Second.
We have a motion, it's been seconded to close 1 McGuire Way. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All abstaining. Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
And-
Monday or Tuesday. We'll get in touch Monday or Tuesday with the order.
Thank you.
We have one more hearing on the agenda, and that is a new notice of intent for 65 Central Street, DEP 161-0083. That's parking lot repair and regrading. If I could have the applicant and or consultant, if you could identify yourself for the record, please.
My name is Bill Dufresne with Merrimack Engineering Services. I'm here also with Martha Yanowitz from J.D. LaGrasse Associates. They're actually lead project designers on this project. It's a project that's involves your new mixed-use bylaws, and they're proposing residential units over the existing CVS,
Green cards.
which isn't in the purview of tonight's meeting, but just to let you know that it's,
You don't have any green cards?
Do you have green cards?
I have you.
Proof of notification to abutters?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Sorry, Carl. Oh, we got too far into it. Thank you, sir. Sorry to interrupt. I just want to make sure.
Please.
The nature of this project is primarily a interior build-out project by adding residents of CVS. But in conjunction with that project, there's an existing paving in the back of the property that's heaved, it's uneven, it puddles, it's in a state of disrepair. So we're here tonight proposing to repair that portion of the parking lot. That's all of the project that falls within. I actually have little minis, which some people enjoy, instead of
I
whipping out
like
a
color-coded things too.
Yeah.
Little brighter.
Saves me all that trouble.
Sometimes looking at them big plans is.
Oh, yeah.
So the,
Thank you.
on that little handout, you know, and Steve,
I'm good. I'll share.
on that little handout, the pink being the 100-foot buffer zone,
Okay.
the blue being the actual resource area, which is a contained stream. The resource area, we obtained the location from the plan on record of this plaza when it was originally built, or when the septic system was originally built. Because it was such a defined resource area, it's a stream with defined banks, we used that plan, we didn't have it redelineated, and then in turn surveyed. That's represented in blue. The building I have outlined in brown, and then the shaded area is the portion of the parking lot that we're proposing to remove, re-gravel and grade with a uniform, consistent grade. And what I've done also is I've dropped the discharge point, which is that little orange treatment swale. That discharge point, about 4 or 5/10 of a foot, to get a little more slope in the parking lot so it would drain better. Right now it puddles, it heaves, it just doesn't get out of there well enough. And so I thought putting it in a treatment swale, grass line treatment swale, would give an opportunity to treat that runoff prior to discharging into the wetlands. What it does now is it puddles in that shoulder and just spills over into the wetlands. It's muddy, it's turbid, you know, it's quality-wise isn't a good discharge. So I thought we put a 50-foot drainage treatment swale at 1% slope, discharge into that stream brook. And that essentially is the nature of the project and why we're here tonight.
Does it have to, this not having any restaurants, does it have to have a grease trap in it
For the, is it parking?
for anything that runs off?
There's no grease trap required or proposed.
I was just
Yeah.
clarifying what she had asked me.
I'm sorry, I was trying to pay attention, but I missed the part.
Well, so,
What's
you know,
happening
I mean,
with this gray area?
That's the
You're
portion of the
removing
parking
it?
lot. They're gonna rip up the asphalt,
Yep.
re-gravel, re-grade it with a uniform, consistent grade. I did drop it, so at the point where you see it meets that orange, that's
Yep.
that's the treatment swale. That point, it's actually being lowered about 4/10 of a foot.
So it will still be
So
a
it'll have a little better
parking
pitch.
area.
It'll have a little
Okay.
better pitch.
All
Because
right.
right now, it's about
Okay.
1.5%, 1.25%, it's uneven. The little heaves in the parking lot are enough to cause puddles all over the place, and they in turn cause the pavement to break.
Steve, at one point, we must have had a stormwater management for this, because we've got a snow storage area and such. I mean, at some point, we
So-
probably did require that.
So my first comment when asked was there's, I believe, 2 or 3 open order conditions on this property that have never been closed out. So we can discuss all this, but typically in that situation, you don't close this out till those other COCs get resolved.
Sure, that's correct.
But so under current stormwater, that would require a catch to any oil or gas runner from the.
I do not know the
We don't do
stormwater
this.
standards that much to say that repaving a very small section would require that. If they're repaving the whole thing, I think that's kind of a significant change or significant repair. I do not know.
Yeah, I mean, if
Qualify
you
for that
had,
concern.
hazardous materials or docks, things like that, you probably would have that built in. I'm not sure on this particular
Yeah, I
thing.
think-
Do you know offhand the nature of the open order conditions? What were those projects involved with? Was it
I
one of the
believe-
replacement septic system?
I believe one of them was the replacement septic system.
So I
I
can-
believe
You
the
definitely want to
other one
dig
is,
those out.
yeah, the other one is the addition on the back, so I believe that back wing is a add-on.
Okay.
And
There was an extension to CVS, it was like 15, 20 years ago or something.
Yeah, all I know is,
remember.
I didn't have a chance to really get into it. I was
Okay.
addressing this and kind of my concerns and comments.
Understood.
Those are just box checking. You know, if everything was done to plan, you just go back,
I'm trying
request
to
a
remember
COC.
when it became CVS from the prior
Yeah.
small pharmacy that used to be there. I think that it may have been the point that they put
Yeah.
that
So
additional.
again, don't quote me. I believe there's 3.
Oh, 3
Okay.
open ones?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
The septic system was the most recent, and septic systems don't really move around that much. So again, I'm not worried. It's just we should march forward on this notice of intent, do what the commission wants to do to get comfortable with it. Get to that point. But just keeping in mind, we really can't close it till those other
Yeah.
ones are issued. Now,
And
the
also-
issuing could be at the last meeting, we issued 3 COCs and an order of conditions, but I just want everyone to
And,
keep in mind that's
Also,
out there.
also since this is a, fairly decent sized commercial in this town, we may behoove us to do a third party on this as well. I mean,
Right.
it's pretty typical
I
on
believe
commercial
it's,
properties.
I believe it's before the planning board, is that correct?
It
is.
is for change of use and site plan review.
So as long as the planning board does the engineering review, typically we would just have the wetland review versus doubling up on the same
Yeah,
exact.
we've already had that review and the first meeting with the planning board.
Awesome, okay, great.
Can I ask, is this stream open or is it in a pipe?
No, it's open up until the point where it's not blue anymore, and then it's covered.
And then it goes under Crosby's parking lot and bumps out the back.
I've
So that was,
dealt with this
that was the
before.
second, my kind of hit list was just better understanding if it's a perennial stream, because that would carry a
Yep.
different setback.
Mhm.
And I don't have an answer to that. Do you guys know by any chance? Is it perennial
I-
at that point?
I believe it is. I
Okay,
think it
so
is.
that would carry a 200-foot buffer.
Correct.
Which brings out, so when we talk about the pink line being kind of our jurisdiction,
You have a
potentially,
riverfront line.
potentially double that. And it, just very quickly, it looks like that's potentially could get pretty close to that new septic system. Maybe not touching it, but.
But it's obviously a highly disturbed site. I mean, we've got pavement all
Absolutely.
over the place, buildings.
I'm
it's-
just, when you
Yeah,
list off what it is,
Yep.
if it's a perennial stream, that
But
needs
it's
to be
good,
shown.
absolutely, it's good
And
to.
it might not be, it's a question on it.
Let's look at just, as a
So
simple
does it-
matter, the USGS map, does that indicate it? If you see blue on that, it's almost certainly, yeah, it doesn't even appear on it. It looks to me, just from visual observation, that has the characteristics that it flows all year long.
I would agree. So, just want to bring up that the plan needs to be modified and
So it's
addressed.
piped, I think, all the way
Correct.
under the Crosby's
Correct.
property and goes out to the wetland behind Crosby's, which is actually connected to Pembroke, right?
Yeah, I think that whole area is all filled.
Right.
If you go back, many, many years.
When I first was working for the Concom, I was called to Mr. Rousey's store where he had this pipe either flooded or became clogged and then flooded regularly. And he had a measuring stick in his basement where he measured the amount of flooding in his basement from this pipe. So this stream, it doesn't just flow seamlessly under Crosby's. It has a lot of different kind of connections.
So where
to all
was
the
it?
buildings
Where
under
was it
there.
flooding? There or across the way?
It was flooding Mr. Rousey's store next to
Post
the
office. So the
post office.
The post
that-
office building.
That's
Oh,
right.
That
Oh,
Yep.
place.
Yeah. So he had like not a 2x4, but something like that. It was the kind of thing you measure your children's growing with, And he had
In a notebook.
he had, and a
20 years of
notebook
data.
Yeah.
20 years of data.
of how
He
deep
showed me that
the
more
water
times.
had been in his
So
basement
just
for
keep in
20 years.
Well, as I said,
the discussion that's off property. It's
I
relevant to the big
understand,
picture, but I just want to clarify real
But
quick.
this stream is connected to a system that
Correct.
creates flooding problems for,
Right,
or
so you-
issues or whatever
You can't
for
create,
abutters.
You can't create,
You
your-
can't, exactly.
push your problems off on other folks. So
Right.
as part of this, we ought to at least have that look-see and discussion
Mm-hmm.
to make sure it doesn't increase or exacerbate the problem any worse.
What we're-
Maybe improve it.
What we're not proposing to do is change a bit of impervious area on the site. We have a building and a parking lot, and they're both remaining the same. We're trying to fix a parking lot that puddles and is broken up. Nothing we're doing is increasing or decreasing drainage, and I'm not to say that any problems do or don't exist now. We're certainly not gonna add to them
Yeah.
by
Well,
what we're doing,
that's the goal, not to add and make it worse.
by what we're
Right,
doing.
right. And if anything, if I may, at a recent planning board hearing, we have, with the change of use to second floor residential, we're actually decreasing the parking load and trying to give a more residential mixed-use character to the site. In turn, we have probably twice the amount of parking spaces that would be required for the change of use. And so one of the encouragements from planning board was to actually eliminate some parking spots. And there's a very good chance, we'll be taking a major swath. It may not be directly related to there, but, taking out like a chunk of the parking lot.
Some
and
of those
turning-
toward the fire station over that way? or-
Correct,
Correct.
and creating more landscape and actually more impervious, or more pervious,
Yeah, we don't need more.
you know,
impervious.
we're gonna decrease the impervious.
What
by
are
doing-
these parking spots for? Why would you not decrease here in this gray
Adjacent
area?
to the rear, well, there
Why would
are
you not
actually,
decrease
so there are,
those?
let me, explain better on this plan. Presently, there's like 5 parking spaces in the back, and we are reducing it to 2 handicap spots. So there only would be 2 spots left. And this is confusing because it shows some of the existing.
But it'll still be paved, correct?
It still
So-
stays paved.
Yeah, so I think the concern is
The whole
decreasing
area,
it.
right,
It's still paved.
decreasing if
Decreasing
you
asphalt.
were,
Right. Part of the challenge of the site, which is, there's an elevator to the second floor, but it's only accessible from that back corner. There was an addition also, kind of along with, I think, the CVS addition, that brought in an elevator. So the only accessible way to the second floor is from that area. So to a degree, and we were actually, separate, we were creating a pedestrian walkway around the side of the building. Presently, it's an odd, about 2-foot wide concrete, kind of apron to the side of the building. We were making it more of a 5-foot, accessible entrance so that one could, technically come around the front in a wheelchair and get to that elevator. So we kind of, to a certain degree, need to keep this paved. The CVS does have a loading dock back there, so they have a truck, but generally, this is really a driveway.
Now, as we talk about this as just, having an impact as far as paving, since if you're talking about putting a second floor, you'd be putting a new roof and new drains.
Oh, no, the second floor is existing. We're converting it from, commercial office to residential.
So you're just converting it, there wouldn't be any change of
No
the
change
roof
in the
line
roof
or any of that? It's
or
just-
we're not
just
changing the
interior wall
roofing.
stuff?
That's why it says, this is essentially an interior build-out project, is what it is. And at the same time, we're trying to improve a parking lot. We are, I didn't mention it, because it's out of the current jurisdiction, if we add the riverfront, maybe not. The current septic system is here. It's being moved to here, so further from the resource area.
Are you fully replacing it? You're not gonna keep
Fully
it
replaced.
online?
The only thing that's remaining
becomes a
is the
reserve.
underground tanks. So the tanks are remaining,
So you'll reuse them?
Yes.
using the tanks under the pavement,
Okay.
in there, again, up in this area, and then a new
turns
leach field.
into- This becomes a reserve area.
So you're gonna keep it on, you're not gonna destroy it, you're gonna
Right.
keep it as a
It's,
backup?
a reserve area is a theoretical thing. It's a footprint. We're required to show as designers that there's an area on that site where you can put another septic
You'd have to
system.
tear out that,
So we're not touching it. It's an in-place pressure dosing system, which is pipe and stone in the ground. It's of no harm and it stays.
But because the new one obviously is bigger because you've got residences as opposed to just a
Correct.
workspace.
Correct. Retail is one of the lowest
course.
design requirements for septic systems. Residential's are more.
Sure, I mean, you don't take a shower at work usually, but.
Right.
so just real quick, I wanna make sure I heard that correctly, the tanks, and that, you're just gonna literally go into the tanks, and instead of going towards the old system, you're gonna take a
Take a
hard
right.
turn
Correct.
and go back out to new.
Because
The
it's a
only
pump
reason-
system.
The only reason I'm bringing that up is the previous conversation about the septic system components. If that 200-foot, I just did it real quick, it looks like the leaching facility is outside of that 200-foot buffer. Those tanks are in it, and if, that's a gray area, so I'm, just wanna clarify, 'cause I
Yeah,
think
we
that,
weren't touching
that's in good, that's really good. Otherwise, those tanks would be an issue, which they're not, so.
I know it's small potatoes, but there is an awesome tree that's growing out from that boulder that's back there. It is existing, defying all logic, and it's an awesome tree that's not going to be touched, is it?
Where is that tree?
It's
Pointed.
by the boulder.
Wait, you don't know the tree?
You don't know the tree if you're sitting.
You know, the one
If
with
you
the green,
drive up next to
the one with the
the
green things on it.
right, the CVS. If you're sitting in the drive-through for
Yeah.
the prescription pickup, if you look straight back, it says there's a boulder right here. It's right.
Oh,
it's
okay,
growing
straight
out
off the
from
back.
underneath the boulder, and has grown. It's at least about this big around.
Diameter? Wow.
It's
So-
amazing.
Oh,
to
you
look
have-
at it.
Not
You have-
touching that area.
Boulder, right? You actually have Boulder on the map.
Which is
On
why I
I-
asked.
I'm
because
not
that
touching that area. In fact,
amazing
No.
tree.
the treatment swale, I split in between two trees in an effort
This
to
is
not
one
have to
thing.
remove
Okay.
either tree.
Because that
Two
tree,
larger trees.
every time I see it, I smile, because it has defied every law known to trees, and it is
What she's carrying?
I'm gonna have to pay
It's a little
attention to
boulder.
that.
you need a
Right at the
plaque.
top of the pink line.
Yeah, we need a
The
big
logic.
Right, but it looks like it might be off. the
Oh,
property.
there,
It's
it
off
is off
property.
property.
Just don't touch it. Rachel.
Oh, no, no.
I would be very
I see the
upset. It's
boulder.
my
We
one
could,
calming Zen moment
could,
while sitting
yeah,
in that
You
drive-through.
will be in trouble.
Right,
You
a
cut
little
that tree
Japanese
down.
garden
A
next
little
to it.
sign says, "Hello, Rachel."
Hi, Rachel. How you doing?
So again,
That's cool.
I'd like to see us just, in keeping with commercial property, just do a third party on this. It should be very simple for them to
I
do
mean,
that.
I think Jillian's gonna have a little bit of heartburn over the fact, and I understand your logic of not redelineating the wetlands, because of the bank, but there's always wetlands associated with it, and so I'm curious to see what Jillian's thoughts are on that. And maybe because it's really, we're not proposing very much new activity in the jurisdiction, it's just rehabbing, maybe she'll be okay with not, but typically if wetland flags hung, you guys, I presume, just flagged it with
Understood.
bank. She might be okay with that, but I'm just giving you a heads up. She might have an issue with that, because she's a wetland person. She goes through the wetland evaluation, and the wetland line's not marked. If it's within a few inches, she might be okay with it, but I'm just bringing that up as a potential snag.
Yeah, I thought was that when it was that defined as a channel, and it is.
Yeah, it's very
and
clear.
there doesn't appear to be any associated BVW, it's bank and stream.
Yep.
That, it's just a matter of economics to,
And she might accept it as such
Yeah, I
and
mean,
move forward,
and-
but
and,
I'm
you
just
know,
throwing that out.
We do it on commercial properties typically, especially decent sized ones, well, just. So I'm not telling you, you have to do it, and I'm telling another commercial, you don't have to do it, so we just typically, do them on the bigger projects.
Is the stream bed vegetated, or is it kind of a scoured, sandy,
It's more scoured.
yeah, it's a sandy gravelly bed.
so perhaps there's a restoration component that could be added there?
Yes.
I said perhaps.
I just typically, again, if they're willing to work with us on improving the site, which
Mhm.
the parking and that swale are, they're
Mm.
not requesting any waivers that I see at this point. So if they're willing to work with us on that, but just to be fair, they have to be willing to work with us on that. There's no requirement for mitigation since they're not requesting any waivers. But if they're willing to work with us, I can definitely do that.
Just thinking that that stream does connect to Pembroke, which then connects to the Parker
And there's
River.
very little
And
buffer.
that we should be paying
Yep.
attention to, oil and gas runoff into a
There's not much buffer.
small right, there's no buffer
If it's
there.
impacted or scoured and being plowed and pushed over, then
Right.
there's some potential for improvements.
And so that snow storage area there, which is right over the stream, that could exacerbate
Yep.
the flooding that's felt in other areas in town, et cetera. So if we could maybe look at that sort of thing.
Well, as far as runoff, you look at, do they have a dumpster back there?
I don't know.
Just,
There are-
just to the right of that snow storage you referred to as 3 dumpsters.
This is where the dumpsters.
Are they covered or not? Open dumpsters or covered dumpsters?
They're covered, I mean, they're lid.
Yeah, okay.
And,
They're not in
yeah,
a
they're
fence
lid,
or
and we
enclosure.
were gonna enclose them, but it, and I think we have other opportunities for snow storage, so I mean, I think we could not designate that as snow storage. I think, this past winter, when I was on the site, and part of it's, there's all this extra parking and so forth. So, I mean, the snowplow person was really kind of piled it more on the pavement rather than on the actual grass area. But there was piles all back there.
It must
We
be
have,
a really
you know-
awful place to plow.
Right.
What I
Back
did.
there.
Well, and this, I mean, nobody ever parks here, for instance.
Yeah.
This is, and for that matter, I've never seen anyone park in the front.
So part of that's gonna be addressed by the previous O&M plan, right? So as part of this,
Right.
there should be something,
Right.
so
Sure.
we're gonna have to align these two and do a delta document, right? So if the original plan showed the stormwater being done a certain way, or, I mean, the building could be in a different spot than it was supposed to be built. The septic could be in a different spot. Like, I think that's part of this discussion, is
Yeah.
determining what was approved. So there's an O&M plan.
Right.
And they show the stormwater being where the septic system's going now, we might have to readdress that.
Actually, I do see
Is
people
there an O&M plan?
park here,
I don't know.
but only about
So that's-
halfway
that's
down.
yet to be
That's about
determined?
where they
Correct.
go.
I'm just wondering, with a larger site with 2 fairly recent applications, that addition was not 30, 40 years ago. I'm presuming there was some, there was some stormwater features here, so I'm presuming, but I could be wrong. I just want to determine that, because that might answer some of our
Yeah.
questions.
What I did do, because I had to survey this, and I had to survey it this winter, and when I went to survey it, the snow was piled where I needed to survey.
course.
And the snow was the dam preventing the runoff from getting to that stream. So what I did do is, in an area adjacent to the treatment swale, is show a proposed stockade, low fence, so that they can't just push the snow off there anymore. They have to remove it and bring it somewhere else. Otherwise, they would pile it there, and this treatment swale will never get used. They would dam it up, and I see that happen all the time.
I do too, especially in their resource areas, guys
You
love
know,
to throw snow at it.
All the time. I just did the shopping plaza in North Reading, the Stop and Shop Plaza. I did almost an identical situation for them. They added the orange theory, and I had a parking lot puddle and trouble. I did the exact same thing with the treatment swale and fenced it, and so they can no longer pile the snow there and cause the problem that.
Let's get a bigger truck, and push it higher. So that's the
I
septic
found
system.
this, Hayes Engineering did this, and I think in 2010
Mhm.
was the septic system
Mhm.
repair work.
Yeah, we typically don't do like stormwater related to the septic system.
But,
I have a feeling it'd be the addition would have picked it up, or the original, if the original building was ever permitted, that would typically when that would get done.
Well, and it's interesting, our firm, through Joe LaGrosse, who's our senior partner, designed the original building in 1983, and so we had the original blueprints, which without the addition, and from those studies, there was, the parking lot just in '83 there was not the same Concom, I believe. So, I mean, it wasn't the same review, and things just.
I don't know, maybe Carl was here.
Carl's been here.
I wasn't here.
I say he's been here forever. I don't know if that counts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there wasn't any, it was all sheet flow off the edges of the parking lot.
So we're talking third-party review. We have some homework to do as far as old COCs, clarifying the river, getting that on the plan. I kind of like Laura's idea of potentially doing some other mitigation along that edge, maybe moving the dumpsters and making that, where are now the dumpsters, maybe restoring that, because that seems less valuable. And it's close to the resource that would help increase the
I
buffer.
think as far as looking at the whole dumpster issue, that's a good way to mitigate stormwater.
Except,
Because
yeah, if they move away and they are enclosed or
and
fenced
you've got
in, it
covers on
keeps
them,
trash from
you
blowing.
keep materials from flowing through them and
So that might be potential for improvements.
ending up in the resource area.
Am I missing any action items?
And the question, if it does become residential, they have 3 now, are they gonna need another one for residential? I'm assuming
Dumpster.
CVS is gonna not want to commingle their refuse with the refuse from the residential.
Well, if you think about it though, too, there were 7 commercial offices above. We're doing 7 apartments instead. I think there'd have to be analysis of what to use. There's still there's presently 2 empty commercial tenants below. There was, I think, a medical office, and I'm not sure what the smaller one was, but there. Somewhat until the uses are defined of those commercial spaces, it's unclear whether, I mean, one of those dumpsters could handle 7 apartments.
Oh, I don't doubt it, but
And then-
it just is, from the costing centers, is it all, who's the owner of the whole, are they condos or are they apartments?
There'll be rental apartments, yeah.
And the current owner of the building would, obviously you don't wanna pay for someone else's refuse, so I'm just trying to get better understand.
So they can clarify the dumpster situation in any expansion area. So they show
Right.
3, maybe show a proposed expansion. If they ever need 2 more, they can show it now, like the reserve septic system.
Often what happens is they just increase the frequency of pickup, but they would keep the quantity the same and just go, okay, we're gonna pick up twice a week, But that's usually, in these commercial projects, you kind of define the dumpster area, the container size, and then.
Yeah, usually you've got a nice pad, if you can cover them, and keep some of the rainwater coming, from going through them.
Directly
and
on
then,
it.
Sure.
Can you move it over to the old septic tank?
That goes up, that's a
No,
There's
no,
a retaining
no,
wall, it's
no.
within a retaining wall.
In front of the septic system, though. The leaching system is retaining walled. You could put in front, so it's taking up parking spots, but it's further away from the resources. Might be better as far as runoff.
Right, so right, you're saying
Yeah.
that.
Right in there.
I mean, there's a whole row of parking spaces. Just move it outside the 100-foot buffer just for resource protection. I mean, it's hitting asphalt and flowing to the same place, but if it makes you feel better, it's an improvement.
We
Are
should
they
also.
sitting on pavement now or or concrete
They're on
pad?
pavement.
They're just on the asphalt,
Okay.
they're not on pads or anything.
Yeah, 'cause-
And they're never in the same location every time I go there.
Okay, I mean, some commercial properties, because they know, especially if they've got heavy stuff going in them, they put them on a concrete pad, because the pavement just gets torn up by the,
By the lifts and, yeah.
back and forth.
We should also determine if it's a perennial stream.
That was on my hit list. Here, wait a minute. So, if you don't mind just making a motion so I can conduct a third-party review on this.
I'll entertain a motion for three-party review if someone would like to make one.
Mr. Chairman,
BSC?
shall we engage the services of BSC to conduct a third-party review for the 65 Central Street Project DEP 1610883 GCC 2019-11?
Second.
We have a motion, and it's been seconded to conduct a third-party review of, notice of intent for 65 Central Street, and I believe you said BSC, engage BSC. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? All abstaining?
Aye.
Motion carries. And let's see. And timeline. How soon are you looking to get
As
this?
soon as possible. We're in front of the planning board. They did push us back to August 14th.
So I recommend just the next meeting,
July 18th?
July
is our next
18th.
meeting.
If we need it, we'll bump from there, but I don't recommend going out 2 months. If we can get this stuff to the packet to our reviewer, he's pretty good. She should be able to get to it before the next meeting if you get it out next week.
So I wanna just make sure we're clear on what, everything that we might, present. I mean, we, talked about.
So do we get them
moving
the
dumpsters,
notice
storage.
of intent submittal package?
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
fair enough.
Yep. Do you guys do BFC group? BFC group?
BSC,
Jillian?
right?
No of them, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'll send you the Jillian's information. You can just send it directly versus sending it to me and then.
So I guess what he's asking is for his punch list for the next meeting. What-
Yeah.
Oh, that, I mean, I had on mine, clarifying the perennial stream, any potential improvements along that edge as far as restoration.
Looking at the
dumps,
snow.
The
looking at
snow roll, I mean, the old order, the old OCs,
The old
closing up
orders
the
are the
COCs
big
is
ones.
big, because I think that will clarify a lot of the
We definitely
O&M.
wanna-
If there is an O&M plan, we need to make sure that that's still relevant. I saw a plan of that addition that I'm a little concerned it's not in the right spot, but I pulled a file for an addition, and just looking at really quick to this, it looked different. I hope it's not, because that's a bigger deal, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I mean,
You don't mind moving that, do you?
yeah. Again, it is what it is. I wasn't here when it was constructed, so that's my only punch list.
Okay.
And those open order conditions, would you be able to notify us of, or, I mean, how do we help close those?
I can work with you.
Yeah.
First, we gotta find them. We gotta make sure we
Correct,
get
yeah, I
them.
found one of them. Again, I hate to say it's not our problem. These should have been closed out. Technically, the property's in violation for not closing them out. So I will work with you the best I can and pull everything I have. but
We'll try and find our
We'll
copies.
find what we
but
have, but
right.
you guys got to do the same thing. You're responsible. The owner of the property is responsible for closing these out. Obviously, everything I have, I'll give you.
I think it's a
I'll
new
work with.
owner probably since the addition,
Yeah,
this
but I mean,
is part of the
you
problem.
mentioned-
Technically, as you know, these are supposed to be hit when properties get sold. These normally get
right.
uncovered.
You
It's like,
mentioned your company.
Oh, some attorneys do and some don't. It
Yeah.
blows my mind, but some of them just.
Isn't it
overlook
easier to do it right
conservation
away?
stuff.
Yeah. So you had a plan
Others are all
earlier.
over it.
You had a plan earlier that said your company did the original permitting and had it on file. Like if your company's been involved in it, then they probably have some of that information. So,
Well, we had the original building, but not the addition.
correct. So I guess
So we only
we'll,
had the,
we'll
the
combine our
septic.
resources. I'm not saying it's all on you. I'll work with you, but it's not gonna be my primary focus. My primary focus is analyzing this,
The new review.
closing it out. I'll work with you, but I can't do all the heavy lifting. That's
No,
not
I
my
just-
job.
This mirrors the project I made reference to in North Reading. I had 2 open order conditions, and we wound up at the final hearing, closing the hearing and getting 2 order.
Like I just suggested, yeah.
Two certificate of compliance is issued. We have to.
So, I'd like to be a little ahead of the power curve and find these, get them
Find them.
closed out before we,
I mean, we may have,
uncover
we might
something that's gonna be a showstopper.
we might be able to close that at the next meeting
Yeah.
and then move forward on the project. So I'll see what I can find Monday.
And from what you saw there dated back to the addition, that was.
I believe I saw a plan that had proposed addition. And again, literally, I just pulled it, I'm like, oh, cool, I found it.
I wouldn't be
We
surprised
can't
there was
always
one
find these.
associated with that and the septic system, at
The
least.
septic system was more recent, that's a no-brainer, we have that. because it's within the past 10 years. Once you get out 20 years, you know, there's no guarantees. We're having a better luck finding files lately. I guess that was my point. Everything goes to the basement. There's been flooding issues. If I can find it, you have full access to it, and I'll help you close it out. I'm just saying I can't be the only one looking for it. If you guys have any record, or you can find, Registry of Deeds has it.
Yeah,
You can
what
at least
else?
pull the order of conditions,
Yep.
right? We just might not know what the
close
plot
out.
plan looks like. Yeah, and I couldn't find a COC, but I also didn't do a deed search. So maybe one of them was closed out, the COC. I just can't find it. So.
Okay.
All right.
So continuing to the
July 18th.
18th at 7:20, please.
I'll
Mr.
entertain
Chairman,
a-
let's continue 65 Central Street. TP 1610883, GCC 2019, 11 to July 18th at
7:20.
7:20.
We have a motion, and it's been seconded to continue the notice of intent at 65 Central Street to July 18th at 7:20 PM. Is there any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? All abstained.
really?
Thank you.
guys.
Thank you very much.
See you in July.
I am.
Let's see, what else do we have on the agenda? I'm sure we have some other business items.
Maybe that 4 Sage Road modification request, Carl, 'cause it's a little bit, it's a longer, not a longer, it's a discussion versus paperwork.
And also Warren Street. We didn't do Warren Street. Oh, it's not supposed to be on here.
So we didn't have to open and continue it.
Got it.
I mentioned it
Oh,
just because it was
got
on the
it.
agenda.
Okay.
So we also have appointments to do.
Correct. I have a bunch of paperwork. Some point to
Okay, Sage Road.
Some handing around some blowouts of it. It's not highlighted. It's hard to see. It's a small 12 by 6. Actually, more like 6 by 6. So 4 Sage, we approved a addition about 4 months ago. And they do the best they can determining what they're going to construct. In this case, they were missing a small landing associated with a stairway that had to get added. It is well outside the 75-foot buffer, but inside the 100-foot buffer. They're requesting that it be considered a minor modification.
Is this the one that had the second story and then they?
Correct.
moved
So it was, we permitted a pool,
Yep.
and then this addition.
And a hot tub.
And a hot tub, just so you
And
get a
big
big
deck.
picture.
Is this
and
the
a
one
big
with the big deck?
patio? Big patio around the deck, a big patio around the pool.
Oh, okay.
So I consider this a minor modification, but it's in the jurisdiction and it's a change to the original plan,
And this-
which
this
is why it's before
And
you.
this is a building code issue, correct?
Correct.
They require to have a landing.
Yeah. So they don't fully design these things. They design it, give it a footprint, so as long as they build within the footprint, they're fine. Often with houses, they do a larger envelope so that all the little jogs of stairs and decks and patios and landings are encompassed in that footprint. In this case, it wasn't. Again, it's further away from any other building part of the project. It meets the regulations. It just has more of a checkbox exercise to go through to get authorization. I do not feel comfortable signing off on this at the window, but I'm not worried about it.
So I would need, if everyone's okay, we would need a motion to make a determination that this is a minor modification.
Do we need to reference the original,
No, I can do that.
DEP
I can
number
do
or
that
whatever?
in mine, yeah.
Does everybody agree? Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion
I have no issue with this as far
Right.
as,
that we accept the modification to 4 Sage Road as a minor modification.
Second.
we have a motion, and it's been seconded to consider the modification of 4 Sage Road as a minor modification. Is there any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None abstaining. Motion carries.
Okay, we have a bunch of bills.
Okay.
So $18 Camp Dennison reimbursement for hardware. Andrew from that program, the environmental program down at Camp Dennison, we agreed to do a scholarship for a Georgetown resident in need at $650. BSC Group, the wetland evaluation for the G Mello project, $575. Camp Dennison Home Depot, hardware and lumber, $263. Conservation Fund, so this is one of the accounts that the Conservation Commission has authorization to spend money out of. It's about $10,000. It was given as a donation probably 15 years ago. We don't tap into it very often, but we're using this for half of the cost of replacing the refrigerators down at Camp Dennison. So that's $2,281, and then the next bill is a Camp Dennison revolving account for the exact same amount for the other half of the fridges. It's a little bit high, but they're putting a commercial refrigerator in the kitchen for the main lodge because it sees a lot of commercial use, and it just doesn't make sense to put in a cheaper fridge. Camp Dennison totaling $3,453, some plumbing, paint, Georgetown Building Supply, Georgetown Electric Department, Timberland Hardware, Bentley Warren for some resurfacing material, and some heating plumbing work to the main lodge. Again, that was $3,453. Another Camp Dennison, $2,000. Reimbursement of the Friends of Camp Dennison for plumbing, and the busing for their program, which is about $800. So this is when they bus the kids from the school to their nature programs.
Where Camp Den is busing them, or the school department?
They're busing them, we're paying for it. The Camp Den group is paying for it. Every year that gets flagged as a kind of question mark. So they're paying for them to come there, but we end up having to pay for the busing. So the fees are kind of covering that.
Why isn't the school department paying?
You ask me that every year.
We're like the church mouse department here. I mean,
Well, the cost of buses for school field trips is huge.
yeah, that's why
It's
we don't
enormous.
have a lot of money. So
And it
it's-
is pretty prohibitive in terms of costing families to pay for field trips. Most of the cost of a field trip actually comes down to buses.
Yeah, but
So-
I understand that. I guess I'm saying, why is
If we
not
want
the...
them to use it, I think that it's a very, and I think we do want them to use
Well, I
it.
mean,
the
if I
schools.
looked at our budget versus the school department, it would be like 1 to 1 million. You know?
I know, but that doesn't mean they haven't accounted for every penny of that. Doesn't- And it doesn't come out of
I mean,
wait a minute.
70% of the town's budget goes to the
You're
schools.
assuming that the school department pays for those buses. When you take children out on a field trip, the families pay for that. So you pay to get into the Museum of Science, and you also pay for the bus to get to the Museum of Science. So it's not coming out of the school department budget, it's coming out of families' pockets.
That's because the school's choosing not to pay it.
No, it's just how you organize field trips.
I mean, that's how it happens, but I'm saying, I mean, 70% of the town's budget goes to the schools. I mean,
That doesn't mean they have any extra money.
Oh, off topic. So as the motion, any motions to pay bills?
Having spent the last 12,
Let's look at-
14, 13 years buying supplies for my own classroom, let me tell you, there's not a lot of money left.
So bills. You're gonna
Mr.
make a
Chairman,
motion to pay
let's
bills.
repay the
I
bills as
would-
read by Steve.
I would question that. I'm sure if I sharpen my pencil, I
Offline.
could find you some money.
Offline. Do we get a second on that motion?
Government isn't the most
Second.
efficient way to do things.
Thank
Just
you.
as a point of fact. Is there a second for that?
There was.
Motion and a second to pay the bills, as read by Steve.
Are we gonna vote?
Sure. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All abstaining.
This is a certification of compliance, both local and state, for one industrial way. This is an old project, started off as an enforcement action, rolled into a notice of intent. So well done. This is a certification of compliance for 14 Pine Grove. It's a septic system. The order of conditions for the meeting tonight for 1 McGuire Way. And we have a bunch of appointments. So I apologize, I think I spaced on the reappointment for Rachel. So I think what happened is Rachel's getting appointed to 2 subcommittees, and so we got the paperwork for the Open Space Committee and neglected to do the CPC appointment, which is also a yearly appointment. So as part of this list of reappointments, the Open Space Committee and the Camp Dennison, we just have to add one more in the motion, one for Rachel for the CPC. No, it's okay. So we can vote on it, it's legal, and then once we print it, I can just go out to the commissioners, they can sign it. It's also not as time sensitive as some of the other appointments. It's not a big deal. Yeah, I forgot to tell you about that, sorry. It's right after the Bruins lost. Who knows? Yeah. So I'm working on a 20-acre land donation up off of North Street that just kind of materialized in the past week.
Twin acre? Did you
20 acre, sorry. I'm not gonna tell you the parcel yet. I mean, I can email you. I just don't wanna say it on the record yet, because it's kind of, it's landlocked, but it's a nice addition to some land we already have up that way. It's either gonna go to us or the state, but within the next week or two, I can kind of tell you guys more about it, or more official. Community Gardens got through CPC about $50,000 for that parking lot kind of restoration project. I'm hoping that the Open Space Committee can tie that a nice bow around it and present it to the commission one of these days. It is conservation land, so it has to get approved by you guys at some point. We've been talking about this for a long time, so now I think we have $60,000. I don't know, did you guys, is there an update on that?
He said that he would talk to you, so.
I haven't heard from him. Yeah.
Did you say 60?
Mm-hmm. So we had.
For a parking lot at the
Well,
community gardens?
it's access issues, so we had $10,000 for access to open space funding, and.
Is he doing it, or?
Kiosk, right, or something?
Yeah, so Peter Durkee is gonna rent the equipment and do it internally, saving us like half the money.
Well, because, yeah, otherwise you have to follow prevailing wage.
Correct.
And that would be very
So he's gonna most likely rent a larger piece of equipment for a month and use it for other projects, but it'll be one of those things where he'll get it at, half the price of hiring someone to do it. So
And-
right
and-
now, the access, when you first pull in, is
And
very dangerous.
This year, could we actually attempt to clear out the Lufkinsbrook
It's-
parking area, which I've been
part of
trying to
it.
get
Said
for
it
20
again,
years,
yeah.
now?
So I've been asking Peter to do that for a while.
I'll appoint you to go drive the piece of equipment.
I'm not, I have to bring my own machine. I can't. I'm not licensed for their bigger brush cutter.
You're exempt.
I think the current plan is to move the access or the main access to the other end. There's some grading issues over there because there's a retaining wall and about 3-foot drop off. So I'm not exactly sure how that's
You're
going to.
talking about from West Street, or what?
No. So the main gardens. If you're
Okay,
in
so
if you're
so
on the road
yeah,
looking
yeah,
in,
right.
you access right now. You drive into the right.
So where they started to clear there.
So
years ago.
originally that was apparently the old part of the gardens, and it just got taken over by vegetation and debris and crap. And they've done a kind of really crude way of kind of trying to cut it back and hack it back, and it just keeps encroaching. That area that's really ratty and gnarly, and there's a lot of trash in there, that's actually going to be the area where you're going to be able to pull in and turn a car around safely. And then we'll probably increase the number of plots next to it, maybe do some raised beds so that, all ages of people can enjoy the gardens. And then there might be a small
Well, yeah,
access road
I'd like
that
to
goes-
see that brought to fruition. I mean, we've got the money allocated now, and, all we need is the labor pot, and I'd like to see it done.
The other, we're waiting, at least in our heads, we're waiting until this gets done. The community gardens are really hard to manage. There's over 60 plots. A lot of people have been down there forever. There's bylaws and regulations that have never really been followed. So in the old days, that used to get cleared out of all the building material, the fencing, all the trash, and it was plowed up every year. And then you restring the plots. Now
Well, I think
it's
we-
up. It's permanent. There's asparagus. There's rhubarb. There's picnic benches. There's bird
I
feeders.
think we had that discussion, and some of the residents were kind of
And
up in
so,
arms about.
so that's the thing that we just need to address at some point. With this new project, I'm hoping we can create some perennial
So-
beds along the edge, so if people want perennial crops, they can rent one of those smaller plots.
So the bigger question is, that I think we had someone for many years kind of running some level of control. That
Correct.
was,
Lonnie
I
Brennan.
don't think he's not doing
Lonnie
it.
Brennan is no longer, he hasn't been doing that for
The question,
almost 10 years.
yeah, the question is, do we need to have someone else kind of doing it, or are we gonna do it internally?
So someone.
Shouldn't they
we-
have some sort of
took over.
management group like Camp Den
Correct.
has?
So, I mean, that's us, by the way, right? So, Lonnie Brennan used to take care of everything, right? He'd bring the money, he'd assign the plots. When he left, we had to take that over. It's a
Yeah,
lot of
now,
work.
See, Susan was doing quite a
Correct.
bit of work on that
Correct.
for a while.
But at this point, we're just kind of keeping status quo. We're not making improvements to the system. The biggest improvement that needs to be done is readdressing the regulations and the bylaw and all these requirements, and maybe doing a subcommittee of gardeners to help. We're not going to tell them what to do. It's a discussion, but I've had more people call and be, oh, there's a homeless shelter encampment, and I'm asking where they are. It gets so trashy down there. People are using carpet as weed block, and it's just falling apart. They're using tarps. There has to be some order. It's supposed to be organic only, removing everything man-made at the end of the year.
Well,
And
I
that's
mean,
not
do
what's happening.
Do you have a list of who's got what plot? I mean,
do.
number one, we need to make sure we collect the fees, and number one,
So that we-
periodically,
so
we
that
need
we
to kind of
got.
go out and do like a basic
Correct.
walkthrough
So
inspection and say
we,
like.
we
hey,
have that covered. Julie's done a great job of computerizing a lot of that, so we know exactly what's out there. But the problem is that we're not doing a good job of enforcing the rules and regs. Lonnie was great in collecting fees and making sure people had their plots, but he wasn't enforcing the organic and no trash. I've gone down there a few times. Peter Durkee's left a truck there a few times, and we've done a few events where we take trash and throw it into his dump truck. We filled his dump truck over the years 3 times. Bicycles, wheelbarrows, people just, they do their thing in the gardens, and then they throw their trash on the outsides. All the garden hoses, it's out of control. So as part of this, my hope is we can improve
So,
the left side,
Do-
right?
Can we
Make it
can
look
we
nice.
develop a set of like bulletized rules that we post on the
We have them, it's just they've never been enforced and they're not posted.
Well, I think periodically you almost have to kind of reintroduce
Correct.
because they become wallpaper. It's like, oh yeah, that bulletin board. I don't even look at that anymore. You
So
have to kind of.
I was bringing it up as a major concern that we need to address. I would like to address it as part of this redevelopment to the left, because I think that will help alleviate. So that whole left, it's all trash and debris. As we clean that area out, we can get rid of that trash, create some raised beds, some smaller plots, and ask people to move their perennial crops to that. And then we can go back and address the rules and the regs and say, now that we have perennial beds, there's no reason that we can't plow this up every year.
Is there a waiting list to get into the community gardens?
That's the other thing, you're only supposed to give we're only supposed to rent out, is it two plots per person? And I think at one point we had someone had 5 plots. So for years, it was kind of like the old boy system. They just, Lonnie would give away whatever he wants. Next thing you know, one person has 5 plots. And so we've been very slowly, as new people come in, we don't give out more than 2. And we're kind of incrementally taking back a lot. So the guy that had 5, he wasn't using 3 of them. And so I think we've gone back to at least 2.
And we
Well,
have
do
some.
we have a waiting list of people who would like
I
to join and?
do not think
No.
so. But we had-
Is it,
And we
is
had
there a
people that
lot
weren't even
of?
residents too. We had them from all over the place.
Yeah.
Pardon?
We still have open plots,
Correct.
mostly in the overgrown areas.
And that's
Yeah.
that's part of the problem. If we could get to the point where all the trash was removed and we replowed it, we could recapture some of those grown-in plots. Because people don't want to go and break. In the
Yeah.
back right, we've gone over the years, 2 of those, people have gone out and broken the plots in themselves.
Could you send me a copy of the rules and regs of the that we established? Because it was probably
I mean, that was probably
25 years
yeah, that
ago
was
that
20.
we-
I don't think I've actually ever read them.
so. I think it would be a good time to kind of revisit and take a look at what
And probably update them.
version we have.
And probably update them and modernize them. a
Yeah.
bit. And now that we have potential where we'll have raised beds and a more kind of active facility, I think it's important to address that. But I was just
So
waiting
when
until
is
after.
the new parking area happening?
I have no idea. So we got the money. The money does not come available till July 1st. The money doesn't come till July 1st.
Sometime this
New
summer then.
fiscal year.
I'm recommending the fall.
Well, Peter and Peter.
So
Okay.
they haven't fully designed it. I'll be honest, I have my own plan. One of our previous commissioners had his own plan. I think Peter has his own, and the Open Space Committee has their own ideas. I keep asking to get those ideas to me so we can kind of create a Delta document. Yeah, so I haven't seen anything. That's kind of the first step to make sure that at least the Open Space Committee and I are on the same page, and then that gets presented to the commission. I think it's going to really impact the gardeners and noise and debris, and I would prefer to be done in the late fall.
Okay.
I don't know their plan, but that would be my preference. There's a couple of people there's an older gentleman that's been there for 20+ years that's got a plot where the new drive access is going to be. We were going to relocate him, and he asked if he could stay there for his, he's a 85+-year-old man. If we can do it till the fall, he said we can help him. I offered to help him move him. Julie offered to help him move. We still can do that, but I just think for general construction season, I think it's better to do in the fall. And I don't know what the Open Space Committee is planning, but
Well, let's
we need to
just be
Peter,
coordinated and.
The first step was for him to talk to you. That was what I asked him to do. So we don't have any plan with him right now to do it.
Well, I think, we do need to lock down something, otherwise this is just gonna go year after year and not get done, and that's what has happened in the past. So we need to kind of have some milestones and goals, timelines, set the fall, make a spreadsheet, this is what we wanna get done, review the regulations, come up with a timeline, when you wanna do it, September, whatever, and just try to stick to a schedule.
I mean, it's great what Peter
Project
did,
plan.
though. I mean, Peter pitched this to the CPC and got the money.
That's great.
So I pitched it years ago for $10,000. Come to find out that wasn't nearly enough to do the project, and that's been sitting and floundering for years. So
Well, I think
he brought it to the
I
next
think
level of getting the money.
The
which is
initial
awesome.
project was really just to expand the parking along the road a little bit, just, move, and now it's kind of morphed a little bit into a turnaround area, parking, a little bit more
And
expansion.
I think 99% of the access is the safety component. My truck's pretty big, the mirrors stick out. That is terrifying to get out of your car there, because people are going down the road at 90 miles an hour, and people are getting out with their wheelbarrows and tools. Like, we gotta get people off the road.
Sure.
There's no access.
I agree. I mean, that's kind of why it's been on the listing of projects to do.
And we have a new sign that we had made, that was installed at West Street, and we have another sign to post once this is done and the kiosk is built. It'll be a
And
nice
the
spot for access for the open
Same
space.
issues with, even when that Lufkin's parking area that most people don't even know because it's so grown over, but that was supposed to be an actually pull in, park in there, turn around, because you're not gonna back out onto 133, they're gonna get killed. So,
Is there access at the bottom of the VFW
You mean the
parking
church- you
lot?
mean the church?
The church parking lot?
well, there's a trail from the back, but that's again now gonna be a private access to the back, but you can access it from West Street on the back side.
Yeah.
So I think as part of this, we might potentially do a small parking lot at the back end of the community gardens and cut a new trail in
Into Lufkin's Brook.
from there, yeah.
Well,
That's a good
there is a
idea.
trail that kind of goes up it's a pretty steep hill.
Yeah,
It's
but
not an easy-
but this is gonna be such better parking for access to that area versus the one that you're talking about. So if this does, if we have enough room for people to pull in and turn around and have a few parking areas, I think that would be.
You could also do, again, you could all do a couple parking areas off of West Street too,
Correct.
because where the wire gate is.
Yep.
And have a little bit of a
Is
pull-off.
that cable still down? The chain?
It's still down. It's it's kind of hooked, but it's like dummy locked, it's
Okay.
not there.
I'll take
People
it.
bring in their own soil and compost when they're gardening up there?
Typically not. So a lot of, if we really want to readdress this and really bring it up to the next level, often they'll bring like a truckload of compost every spring
From where?
from a reputable, there's a really good place in Ipswich apparently. So you bring in 20 yards of it, and it's split equally amongst everybody, and they can wheelbarrow around and spread it out. Right now, there's no compost. They're just throwing their trash and debris in the same spots. So with the wheelbarrow and the garden hose and the plastic is all the organics.
Wondering what the
that are on it.
farm across the street is doing with their manure and stuff. If
We
they
could create a
if they work out
composting area.
something, yeah.
I mean,
And put that in
I
once a
bring
year.
I bring a lot of horse manure in for
Well, maybe
compost.
we could,
It is-
you
it
could
is a
make an agreement with them
nightmare.
that,
I mean,
It's
it
a
was
nightmare.
because they're obviously paying to
Correct.
or doing something with it.
If
Just
it-
ask them if they would.
And if it's a larger composting setup, it's way more efficient. So I wouldn't recommend that because it brings in a lot of invasive seeds and species. It sounds great. I bring in horse manure. It is.
I heard that
a
conversation when the goats eat. So on one of the MACC lunch yesterday, yesterday,
Mhm.
the goats are good for the invasives.
Yeah.
It's a first pass.
they eat everything.
But then you have to quarantine them, they said, for a month because of, you know, whatever.
Yeah, they don't digest the seeds, they just pass them and
That's
spread
right,
it around.
yeah.
So all the hay, so a horse manure has a lot of hay in it,
Yeah.
and hay is horrible for invasives.
Well, horses like cows have a very inefficient stomach, so.
So
you know.
I think there's a lot of potential,
A lot of
right?
pass-through.
As part of this expansion in that area, you know, we can bring in compost or make our own compost, create a bin area so that people can put all their waste versus just throwing it in the woods and creating a
Well, you know,
mess.
it's good to talk about, because also, you know, we wouldn't want to be concerned about people kind of putting stuff in a compost they're bringing in that we don't know, that it may have some other contaminants in it too.
Which is nice if you bring in it from a reputable place. So I have a friend that goes to the Haverhill garden plots, and they bring in 20 yards a season, and you get 2 wheelbarrows per person. You know, you have a 10 by 10 plot that's perfect to top dress or to do rows. So it's something. I mean, we have to take it out of the Stone Age before. You know, like
This
right now
Brickhead's farm in Hamilton does, I mean, because Hamilton went and they compost
everything.
everything.
Yeah. But I mean, they're still using black plastic down there in carpets. It's one of those things we just
Well,
have to kind of reinvent the wheel down there.
Yeah, I think, again, that's revisiting the kind of rules of the road, what we want to see.
It's also not just that, it's
Right, we should-
enforcing it. It's not just, I mean, we exist them, we just haven't enforced them in forever.
But again, we need to know who's there, what plots, you can go
We
and
got that.
say,
Yeah, we
who
got
put
that.
the carpet on plot number 10, as opposed to, I don't know
I
who
mean,
this is.
we have an email distribution list. We have everybody or almost everybody?
Almost everybody.
Almost everybody.
Yeah.
So out of the
Why can't
60
we
plus.
get everyone together for a garden
need to.
meeting
And leave the pitchforks
at the
home.
beginning? Yeah, no
Yeah.
flaming pitchforks.
Again, we've done that before, so I've done that a few times since I've been here, and they bring their pitchforks. It's their plots, they've been there for 20 years.
If you remember, there was some emails that went around a year or two ago, and, you know, some guys from out of town were complaining, and, you know,
Correct.
how
They-
dare we do this and that, and,
I think he left the state because of us.
well, that's fine.
Yeah, no, he
He got
left.
49 others to go to.
Yeah. No, there was some really mean emails flying around. about
You're
the guy.
kidding? From gardeners?
Laura, you worked in that department. People aren't always nice to us. There was some really nasty
Well,
emails.
the,
like,
the,
there was some
the
reference
nasty
to like,
person, he didn't even live in the town. He was from some town a ways away. I don't know, he was driving here from,
Oh, you know why? Because he had been thrown out of the gardens in his own town and every town in between.
Funny.
He's having to go farther and farther and farther away
it's probably true.
from his actual house.
But I had read they were quite nasty, I
That's
think.
terrible.
We need names.
So,
Yeah.
well, he
Give me
left.
names.
So can I get a motion on the appointments to the Open Space Committee, the Camp Dennison Committee, and Rachel to the CPC?
Well, okay, we know Rachel, what were the, you need to read the names for us.
Can you just do a blanket?
Yes, you can. Peter, John. not
Peter,
names,
Paul, and
Rachel.
Mary.
So that's the Open Space Committee. Christine, Ella, George, Jim, and Kim to this Camp Dennison Committee, and Rachel to the CPC, if she still wants to do it. I think you sent an email saying you were still interested.
Do we sign these?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to reappoint all of the people as read by
don't
Steve
be
to
here?
the
Yes.
subcommittees
Open
as read
Space
by
Committee.
Steve
Open Space Committee, Camp Dennison Committee, and
and
CPC.
Second.
We have a motion, it's been seconded
Do we
to
sign all of
Yeah.
these?
Yes,
Okay.
every single one of them.
approve the appointments to the Open Space Committee, Camp Dennison Committee, and the CPC, the names as read by Steve. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All abstaining.
Abstain.
One abstention, so noted.
Don't agree
Steve,
with you.
did we all
Peter.
get
No, I'm
reappointed
I'm not
to
voting for
the
myself.
Concom?
I
I assume
I'm
you didn't tell
blanking.
me not to come, so I'm assuming.
I believe you were. It hasn't gone down to the clerk's office yet. That's the trigger that lets me know it got done to get sworn in. I don't believe that's happened yet. I only need 4 signatures on those, so you can stop after.
I know, I'm not signing,
Why is Laura signing them?
because because Rachel's not signing either.
Okay, just asking. That's all I have, Carl.
Okay, as soon as we get done signing, we can have a motion to
Can I ask a
adjourn.
question?
Sure.
Did anybody go to the Camp Den meeting last week?
The Camp Den what?
Meeting?
No.
I did not.
No, I couldn't go. Okay.
What day was
We
it?
used to have a liaison to the Camp Den committee. Is that you, Laura?
Yeah, it was me.
Okay. Anyone
But then
else interested?
I had
Because
to
I
go
think,
back to work.
well, it's summertime, so you should be
Yeah,
able to jump back in.
I'll go again.
Okay.
Actually, do they meet on
Tuesday.
Tuesday mornings? Is that what it is?
Usually 9 o'clock Tuesday morning.
Tuesdays does not work for me. And that's it. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and it's been seconded to adjourn for the evening. Close the meeting of June 20th, 2019. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, all abstaining, motion carries. Good night, everyone.